realized I didn't ever
That's
write any notes up for
The
race.
Brits have about 8 kids now, I think.
Who?
The Brits out there.
Oh, really?
They all work in the warehouse.
They do.
So, I mean, there's one that's just barely.
Well-spoken young kids.
Oh, good
too, when they
kids,
work.
yeah.
All right, we're live. Thank you.
Yes, it's time. Okay. Okay, welcome to the Raleigh County Commission meeting for this 10th day of April. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comment. I see no one in the chamber. Is the Elizabeth, do you have any comments? Okay, we'll move to commission comments and Commissioner McKinley.
All right, well, Thursday afternoon, the building committee on the new public safety building, reviewing a lot of stuff. We've got a lot. Figuring out what we're going to afford to build, what we want to build, and adjusting some of the parking, and a lot of changes going on right now. But we had a good discussion, a lot of different options of what to do. We're working on getting through those things. Other than that, it was mostly holiday weekend. Sunday, I went to my wife's family's, her cousins in Kansas City. There was probably 50 plus people
Oh,
there.
really?
Yeah, a lot of them I didn't know. Yeah, I know her cousins, and I even know their kids. But then the kids, there's a whole slew of kids about this big and smaller running around today. No idea which one they belong to, but it was a good day. I mean, it was really nice. It was beautiful weather to be outside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of people we don't see very often. Had a good day. So, that was about it.
Okay, Commissioner Ford.
Yeah, well, I hope everybody had a blessed and happy Easter holiday weekend. I thought the weather was just absolutely gorgeous this weekend. The wind was down. Looked like it sprinkled just enough to make everything dirty. On the side of that, well, nothing measurable, but we'll get that monsoon here coming at some point in time. When it happens. So anyway. Thursday afternoon, listened in on the Council of Foreign Affairs State and Local Officials webinar for the month of April. Alex Schroeder, Chief Technology Officer at the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, as well as Michael Molson, Deputy Director of Transportation and Climate Division at the EPA, took some time to discuss the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act and its provisions for sustainable, resilient, and equitable transportation projects, including EV, and with that, along with the infrastructure deployments, grid integrations across those sectors. The senior fellow there at the CFR, Heidi Krebo-Rediger, moderated the discussion and with a pretty good question and answer session afterwards. Also on Thursday, attended the crisis intervention team meeting. Discussion included a handful of old items, including the upcoming CIT class that will be held out at the Public Works Conference Room, July 17th through the 21st. Got an update from the state of Kansas CIT board. Some new business items included an update from the CIT panel from RCPD Lieutenant Daryl Asher and Pawnee Mental Health CSU Director Brent Haverkamp. They recently attended the Crisis Response and Resource Symposium. Had a lot of good discussion there. And we talked about also expanding the local council to a more regional team to include entities from both Geary and Pot County, and potentially calling it the Flint Hills Crisis Intervention Team. This group will meet again in early June. Friday morning, met with former 1st District Riley County Commissioner Dave Lewis, catch up on a few items, including a possible appointment to the Fairgrounds Task Force. It's still kind of moving around. We discussed some other economic development ideas, thoughts, and some related commission things. For me, it's always good to catch up with former commissioners just to chat and see what's going on, catch up. bounce a few ideas off. Had breakfast at Vista, so that's always good too. So also Friday morning, I met with Greg Willems and Greg Lawrence from the K-State Foundation. We also discussed the Fairgrounds Task Force, their potential involvement, some general updates to the plans that are going on out in the Ed's district. Thought it was kind of fluid out there. And we discussed the recent groundbreaking of that third office complex that had happened the day before. So had a pretty good dialogue. Really do look forward to seeing what this task force can produce and come up with once we get to that point. Friday afternoon, met with my doctor in Topeka via video conference to catch up and refresh on things. Everything's pretty much status quo at this point in time, so nothing really new to report on that end. And then lastly, we had a pre-law board meeting to select the April meeting agenda. As you can probably imagine, animal control and enforcement was the major topic of discussion, and it was pretty robust. I asked that somebody from the city provide a presentation to the board because that's yet to happen on this particular item. So questions and concerns from everybody in general can be addressed. We also discussed some preliminaries for the 2024 budget and several grant possibilities that will be on the agenda, as well as a couple of different proclamations. The regular meeting, of course, is next Monday afternoon, 17th at noon at Hatton City Hall. Should be interesting. That's all I got.
Okay. So let's say, Thursday afternoon, I met with Craig Cox and Amanda Webb in the planning office to have further discussion on the search for lagoon side in Keats. We're gonna meet again, Craig and I are gonna meet again today. Friday, I spent most of the day, or most of the morning anyway, finishing my taxes to get to the accountant that afternoon. It's harder than I would want, but anyway, and then I received, I don't know if you guys got it, 1980 historical study on Keats from the museum. I have to send it to you. It's a long that was published in 1980 by the Keats Women's Extension. And it's really detailed. It's got maps, it's got pictures of businesses and houses. It's really a neat thing. So I didn't print it out because my printer is almost out of ink. Sorry. It was long. So anyway, I'll print it here. I'll send it to you. Let's see. Friday afternoon that I went bought some plants to plant. And Saturday I spent most of the day working in the yard. It was a great day to be out in the yard. Trying to catch up on the bed cleaning. We planted some spreading junipers in my sloping backyard and decided to do that all of it in. And I'm a little allergic to junipers, so I've been kind of suffering a little bit with sinus problems. I think I got it under control now. They like to stab me. I did have to move some bushes around. Play. Sunday, played in the bell choir for both services at the church, so I was up really early. And then I enjoyed a great Easter lunch with some good friends. Didn't have any little kids running around. Later in the afternoon, I continued planting, working in the yard, and went over paperwork from today's meeting. And really enjoyed the spring weather. It was a couple of good walks in the parks. So that's it for me. So business meeting.
No business items, commissioners. Do you have any changes to the minutes?
Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes as written from the April, what was that? The 6th meeting of the Riley County Commission.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to approve the minutes as written from the April 6th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tentative agendas from the commissioners. Any items for next week's press conference? Does everyone wish to attend and have lunch at the intergovernmental?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
When's that?
24th of April.
2 weeks from today.
Oh, I will not be here. That's probably gone. Still going.
Do you want a lunch, Catherine?
Yeah, I'll try.
they've been having options, you
Yeah.
know, they've been having a wrap and like a sandwich each time, so.
Well, they have a really good luncheon for the master plan, the farm camp. That one, they had chicken and they had some really nice vegetables, sauteed vegetables. Really healthy, good kind of stuff.
Clancy,
I'm gonna be out of town that afternoon. I've got to take my wife into Kansas City for doctor's appointment.
sounds good. Next commissioner's on up at 9 o'clock, so you have a bit of a break. No business items today.
I usually sit around with a friend. Excuse me? I usually sit around. Step back upstairs. Yeah, show some stuff.
No problem.
Just think I'm gonna start treating.
Robin? I'll try not to be
Oh,
as sensitive as Robin about it.
I know, try not to burst into tears. Do your best.
I think it kind of a complex over there for a while.
Yeah, a little bit. Might need some counseling.
Yes. It's close by.
Yeah. Just right down the hall.
Clancy was notorious for always getting up and leaving when Robin would come to do a presentation. She said something one day, is it me?
It wasn't that he was already gone. He'd wait till she actually got up to the podium and then. Boom.
Once I found out it bothered her, then I did.
Morning, how you doing?
Morning, figured you'd come join you in person.
All right, good deal.
I do have some, let me tell you about some upcoming events that I forgot to report. In military relations committee, business after hours in C-suite. At Manhattan Brewing Company, it's 5:30, 8 o'clock. Women Jewel Festival, April 15th to the 16th. I thought it was a fun one to go through. This weekend, yeah, it's awesome.
Good to see you. You're coming in person, actually.
We hired a new person, so.
Hi, new person.
Yeah, this is Stacy. She's gonna be joining us and she's gonna be covering city and county.
Oh, good deal.
Doing some local government.
So Stacy, have a last one.
We'll say.
Good deal. Welcome, Stacy.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
They have a golf class. Do you want to play golf?
No,
No,
that's for,
they have the Armed Forces Community
Yeah.
Foundation Golf Classic.
yeah,
And then 22nd stage.
of course, if you don't play golf, you can also make a donation. That's allowable too.
Sure. Oh, that's.
Stacy, is it EN or ON?
There's a ribbon cut, there's a ribbon cutting tomorrow too at a place here downtown. Give me a second.
Where you from, Stacy?
I'm about to graduate.
Good
I'm about to graduate.
deal.
Dry Clean City.
Oh, yeah. The one went on points.
Mhm.
Good.
I'm assuming it's the same County East or whatever it is.
Yeah.
over
Are you gonna take full-time employment at the Mercury?
Yeah.
All right, mom and dad's gotta be happy with that. Got a job already.
Yeah. We're all very, very excited.
there. Long time. And then the
Congratulations.
place out there by Taco Bell,
I'll talk about,
Crispy Clean or something.
What's that?
I don't know if they're still open or not. Dry clean and laundry places.
Krispy Kreme? It's still open.
Is it?
Yeah, that's. I listened.
It is. It is.
It's the goals, it's got really.
Oh, really?
Haven't you guys ride the train with Smithers yet?
Not yet, they're gonna start up again, May 6th, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and say they're getting close to getting some money. Some more.
He's been writing grants like crazy.
Yeah, and say you need to teach me how to do that. I can think of a few things I can write grants for.
Yeah, you want to go and volunteer in one of the fame narrators.
I should.
We
I
always
thought about
need-
that. Yeah, yeah. Well, Steve and I have the same birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we said, yeah, so we like to joke, we're the same person, just 4 years apart. So
It's good.
it's got the
Like to
hook.
copy him. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. Yeah, so one of our friends used to be the dean of the school of journalism here, Steve Smithers. He retired last year, I think.
Yeah.
Last year.
Last year.
Yeah, so knows everything about everything. So John Ford, other commissioner,
Well,
and Greg McKinley, who's invisible right now. So
lots going on this Monday.
And you are,
I'm Stacy Olson.
okay, and,
I'm the new reporter for the Manhattan Mercury.
oh, really? Okay, so you'll be attending here in person? Maybe
That's my goal. Yeah.
good.
so, yeah, so we'll have our county and some city meetings and. You know, all the other usual stuff, that all of our feature stories and all of the,
Mhm.
the interesting stuff that goes on, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to have someone in person because you don't always catch everything online. It's kind of hard to listen to him.
Right, and that's part of my problem sometimes, to be honest. I'll listen online mostly, but my hearing is not what it used to be, so. Years of loud radio
That's probably it.
and.
Music.
Well, loud everything.
Yeah.
Loud cars, loud bikes, loud everything. But yeah, no, it's good to. I don't know, it's good to be in person, of course, anyway. You know, obviously the stream is great, you know, the more people can be reached that way, so.
Talking about doing something with.
We've got some upgrades to make on it. Yeah, it's been, believe it or not, it's been almost 3 years since we put that together.
Mhm.
Well, it's been almost 3 years since the world thought it was ending.
Hence why we went to a live stream.
Right.
Well, that's good.
By the way, John won't say it, he has slimmed down quite a bit, and I wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you, appreciate it. It's been a work in progress.
No, it's tough. I got a friend who lost about 110 pounds.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm about 100, right at 120.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, and he's, his favorite is, it's like, his routine is like PB&J in the morning and run.
Mine is this and 2 hard-boiled eggs, so it's about the same thing.
PB&J and run.
Yeah,
It works though.
it's protein and energy. That's what it's about in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do it. I just need caffeine. Just put it in a syringe and inject it and that'll be okay. in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that one. My family immigrated here and we still own a farm down in Brazil and we grow a lot of espresso.
Really?
Yeah, I grew up drinking a lot of it.
They have like fancy espresso machine or anything like that.
No, we usually just do it on the stove when I'm back home.
That's one thing I would shell out for, is like a fancy espresso maker.
I have one and I do love it. I just finished working as a barista, actually. Yeah.
So when you come in person, we'll expect.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
Good stuff. Yeah.
we're just used to drinking the strong stuff that's out of the graph over there.
Yeah, I drink a couple cups in the morning, and that's about it for me.
I get to this time of the year and I quit drinking coffee, but the winter yeah.
Right, is it too warm for it?
Yeah.
I get you. Not a nice coffee person? or-
No.
Okay.
I'd be awake all night.
How do you really feel, John?
If it's ice or if it's cold, I'm not touching it. I can't do the
Drink
microwave
coffee,
either.
Cold, an hour later, she drink it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You know, at room today.
It probably tastes like motor oil as far as I'm concerned.
Right, black coffee, yeah, say, I've made it's a good thing and a bad thing, mistake of going to Radina's and getting the cold brew. And cold brew is amazing, they do a great job, but whereas about this much coffee for me is pretty good normally. But that much cold brew is all it really takes.
Mm.
But then it's so good, I end up slipping it all down, and before I know it, I'm kind of walking around like I've been shocked or something.
I could deal with that. It's when it comes down about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're just like, oh.
Yeah, then you're like, I need a nap. Where's it hot? I need a hammock.
I had some yesterday for lunch because I woke up at 2 in the morning. Saturday night, Sunday morning. Oh, I couldn't go back to sleep. So by lunchtime, I was like,
Got down.
Yeah,
No, I get that.
well, I had some coffee.
Told her I got up kind of earlier this morning. I smelled something in the room. I woke up, my dog had made a mess. I'm like, "Oh,
No,
she'd eaten something.
That's what
outside."
I wake up to.
I didn't agree with her.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I don't want to know which end it came out of. I'll just clean it up, I guess. But, I don't know.
People drop stuff on the trail and I didn't know. My dog was starting to pick up something. What is that?
What are you
Eating
doing?
stuff.
Yeah, don't eat that. That's candy some kid left since Halloween. Don't eat that. Or the the tree, I don't know, the tree in the back, my backyard has got a lot of, I don't know, this the silly. Like the kind of acorns, they look like acorns.
Yeah.
Not quite acorns. I forget what those are. It's like a type of walnut acorn.
Yeah, it's a walnut.
It's a walnut.
It's the walnut, the ones that come in the.
Well, they like,
Morris throw off some really weird things.
Yeah.
They're about this big.
yeah, she likes to eat those.
Yeah.
Eat those walnuts.
Good, how are you?
Doing pretty good. I was gonna introduce myself.
Oh.
I was watching.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning.
Morning. So this is Stacy.
Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. Stacey.
Yeah, I was reading an article that this time of the year, the veterinarians get
Question about any-
a lot of calls for dog poisoning.
Can always, yeah, can always.
So people don't pay attention to their
Those things
Easter
up.
candy and the dogs eat it
My
and
cell
get
number
sick.
is on there, and feel free to call.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Brazil, huh?
Yeah, I'm not from there. I was born here, but my family-
Yeah, we had pie and ice cream. Which is great.
Well,
I had a salad.
thank you.
Probably a little. Got some.
Yeah.
I didn't get it, thought that or even for- That's what he's.
Berry and blueberry.
I stopped by Dillon's and Walmart yesterday and I was gonna make it a point to get some jelly beans and I forgot.
Oh, I've never been a jelly bean.
Oh, I love jelly beans.
Of course, even as a
Except for the
kid.
black ones.
I love the black, those are my favorite.
I never ate like. Kid.
I usually like them in a mixture. I don't like them like in a bag by themselves.
But no, we got, Stan got some last week when I had a bowl sitting out there. Didn't sort through them, so finally I just went through, pulled all the black ones through this one, because these ones, I don't like liquid.
Daryl.
One thing, black licorice, I like tasting it really good. My mom loved black licorice.
Yeah.
I like red.
Yeah.
My wife loves red.
Oh,
Well,
Especially if it's like a crash, thing, you know, if you're on vacation or something. You know. You just get that.
no, it's.
Red licorice.
That's their only means.
Yes, yes.
Right, on the, and he's on the.
Let's say.
We talked about something weird or something. Let's say, but they always talk about. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Only got 50% of the rating. How you got that?
Yeah, if we can just get Kirk to start talking about relations and any. Food puns. And I was my food fun. That wasn't too bad. It was kind of cheesy.
That was a good call.
I'm trying to. So-
Another one will materialize later. But I can't plan these things.
That person, like, I want to say, oh, yes, it's sad.
Yeah.
But I stopped with, so.
The guy who went home, Walter, you know, they have them at the
I was
house.
there. Like there's 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, so I wasn't at graduate's room.
Yeah,
The place for them before.
they have also things around Kimball that,
It is nice to actually.
you know, where the pizza places and stuff that. The convenience store, they have like, you know, I go, one time I go to 3
Blue
places to find. Yeah, you know where the Pizza Hut is and Canada, and this convenience store there is. I go in there.
Right.
They usually have like, plus they have good cookies. Don't call us. But.
You know,
but yeah,
the
they have-
best thing there that I like, got some days, you know, like, I just. Me eat the best done night is what it's gonna clay center. Now it's that tasty
Tasty.
pastry.
Yeah.
And they deliver to theirs.
Oh, really?
Theirs and they're famous for like their nut rolls.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And they have those in theirs.
Oh, really?
A lot of people go in there.
I've gone when I've been in Play Center, and that's what I get those time.
Oh, I tell the play center. She was good with that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They are, they're just totally different. Texture, totally different.
So they're good.
Mhm.
Well, there's one down there, varsity, we were there when my daughter was. They got some baseball.
Yeah, I've tried it. When it first came out, I thought.
But
"Ugh,
it
no
sounds
way."
terrible.
But I tried it, and it's actually pretty good.
Save me some.
Yeah.
I can remember that.
It's,
I just can't.
I just as soon have a plain maple long gone.
Remember to think about
It was neat trying it. It's pretty good.
Last year, it was like.
It's like I'm not wanting to do the peanut butter burger. And it's- A lot of people love that stuff.
Yeah. Well. That's a little different.
What is?
Peanut butter.
That's what one of the young ladies that works over there. That we were temporaries, she always, she was, you know, she just left, and she was always eats peanut butter every morning, she put it on those rice cakes. I say, like, the rice cakes, she said, no, it's just something to put my peanut butter on.
Yeah.
That girl ate peanut butter every morning.
I would second that notion.
Well.
I really like
And then those, most of these people don't work.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, we're trying to agree. Peanut butter,
Don't disagree.
peanut butter maybe, but bacon, no way.
That's the most
I have a
anti-American.
daughter that's really sensitive about bacon, so she doesn't like all of that.
My wife.
So she'll like strip off the meat from the bacon, you know, and she really likes turkey steak and she don't have the fat, so.
Well, that's what my wife can go out the place, you know, they can burn. I posted burn if you can do it. So just like it's sitting there with the fat. That's good.
Yeah, we'll get a finger down.
Actually, I can prison and burn it.
It's hard to do.
Guess if it is, then take it off.
That's okay.
It's not bad. I need to signal the waitress.
Uh-huh,
Yeah. I'll take the double bacon.
Yeah. We made bacon, those, yeah, so we butchered it.
Oh, yeah.
Just bring,
Now, a lot of times you have to choose.
Yep.
If you miss,
Yeah.
speaker.
7 packages of bacon, one way. Just do the bacon. More meat than that way, you know, so it's. Better than dispatch than I did the first one. Also did the pandemic. And 2 songs for that, you know.
Yeah, I think about time to do some jerky again. It's been a while.
I'm John. Good morning. Good morning.
I had, we had.
Oh, it looks like we lost out on that kid from Baylor.
I did.
Oh, you go to Houston.
Yeah.
Better.
But now we're scouting the other guy from Houston that's,
Other one. Houston.
yeah, he's leaving, so.
What was that?
Hard to keep up with.
Basketball?
Yeah,
What, we got our eyes on some people?
we do.
Oh, there's several of them out.
Yeah.
Really?
But he's also, at that last press conference last week, said he's being particular, you know.
I said he's waiting, he thinks some of the better people get on the
There's
way,
more that'll come out yet, so.
we shall see.
And we have like the, depending on what publication, look at anywhere from 20 to 30. In terms of top class coming in,
Yeah,
That's-
that's freshman class, yeah.
3 quick.
beyond his press, did you hear his press conference? He basically talked about what they should. Just one more playing time and he wasn't gonna get it,
Yeah.
you know?
He has said what he wanted and what I
Yeah,
didn't.
they didn't line up, so.
He said if it doesn't work out, you know, let's come back and have a conversation.
I'd rather a coach be honest with the kid.
Yeah.
Lead him along though, you know.
And
I
that was good.
appreciate that.
Yeah, he did say, he said, yeah, if things didn't work out, he wants to come back, that's fine. Because a lot of them say, nope, you're gone, you're out of here. And they, when he speaks good.
Yep.
Ready, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. First report is the 2023 year-to-date wage and overtime compared to budget report. You see in the upper right-hand corner, the 25% kind of in the gray. That is the point in time of year we were at. So that's kind of what we use as the barometer, respectively, for the budgets, the far right column, to see where departments are budgetarily. See emergency management is just a little bit high at 26.3. EMS ambulance always has that larger dollar amount for overtime compared to the rest of the budgets, 201,000, but that's budgeted overtime. That's because of their 24 7 days a week shifts. So that is budgeted and anticipated. Overall in overtime, we are just at got the percentage there, year-to-date total of 217,952. Those departments such as Public Works, noxious weed, they do have higher budgeted amounts for overtime. So Public Works is at 10,000, but that's well within what they have budgeted for overtime. Any questions on that first report there, Commissioners? Next report's a little bit more detailed breakout of all the respective departments' budgets for personnel, regular salary, seasonal, and overtime. Give you a little bit more detail on that. If you have any additional questions, be glad to research that and get information to you. Any questions on that report? The next report is 2023 year-to-date budget activity report. Once again, comparing it to that 25% point in time of the year. Far right-hand column has the percentage of each respective budget. You can see those highlighted in blue. Budget appropriations, insurance, and general fund transfers, of course, have exceeded that at this point in time because those are cyclical in nature, and when those payments get paid out, they should be within the 100% range by the end of the year. I always like to remind you, Commissioners and the public, this first page is all inclusive in the general fund. So it'd have to be the entire fund that would exceed 100% in order for any type of budget amendment to be done at the end of the year. Always like to point out 2 lines down from that boldest, the widest blue section, the county general at 2.92%. It is typically a lot lower percentage than the rest of the departments because that is where we have that budget stabilization amount of $3,050,000. We'll show the breakout of that a little more detail here later on down in these reports. Any questions on that first page, Commissioners? Next page, special alcohol program and RCPD operations. Of course, RCPD operations because the first appropriation amount went out, so that's why it's atypically a little bit higher than the 25%. Also, special alcohol program. Just based on the cyclical nature when those funds get paid out. Any questions on those, Commissioners? Next page is all enterprise funds. Those are funds that get their taxes not from the general ad valorem taxes, but from fees and special assessments from individuals that own property or live in those districts. As you can tell, they're all doing very well at this point in time. But no general ad valorem taxes go to those funds. Any questions on those? Next report, just a little bit more detailed breakout of that. What I pointed out earlier, the county general, personnel, contraction commodities. There's that budget stabilization amount of $3,050,000 I referred to. Always like to also point out the personnel in this. There are no personnel that get paid out a salary or hourly payment. That is just for what we budget for separation of service. Right now, we're doing pretty good on that. Any questions on that report, Commissioners? Next report is a comparison of 2022 to 2023 expenditures, March to March, and also year to date through March. Just a little snapshot to give commissioners a comparison of how departments have spent money from last year compared to this year. It's not always an apples to apples comparison, but it's a good snapshot to look at. And if you ever have any questions on why there's a difference from one year to the next, we can always get you more detail. Any questions on this report, commissioners? Next report's RCPD expenses paid by Riley County, 2023 expenditures. You can see those there. I like this next report a little bit better. RCPD expenses comparatively since 2016. I think it gives you a better snapshot of kind of where we're at compared to previous years. I would whistle as well. The physician fees, those are high, commissioners, at
Yes.
49,000 already for the first quarter. You see that averages out, 50,000 to 2022, but I would contend it's looking like we'll exceed 2022's at this rate. It's generally attributed to the type of clientele that we house in that facility, but then also, just like all other expenditures, medications and medical services have gone up tremendously in cost as well. So I think it's twofold. We have had rather high expenditures, 2021, 2022, even 2020 was higher than we had prior to that for the last 3 to 5 years.
We've got a large population at the jail
Yeah, the
too.
numbers.
Numbers are up, and you'd be just amazed, commissioners, at what 1 or 2 inmates does that have serious medical conditions in there. Psychotropic drugs, a lot of the issues that we have, and those are very expensive.
Yeah.
Any questions on those, commissioners? As you know, commissioners always like to point out, these expenditures, other than the budget appropriation amount, all of these expenditures are paid 100% by Riley County. No other public entity provides any funding for this. That's due to the RCPD consolidation statutes that were required for that, just like there are all facilities. Any questions on that, commissioners? Next is a little more detailed breakout of the RCPD advanced correctional health care for the medical that we spend. You can see that we currently have $25,083 remaining in the pool. You can see the county inmate population is higher at 115. Any questions on that, commissioners? Which does, of course, directly contribute, as was mentioned, to the increased costs that we're seeing in medical services. But unfortunately, where the state law reads, if they have a medical need and we need it, we are obligated to pay for it. Any questions on any of those reports, commissioners? Commissioners, take time, review those reports in further detail. Have any questions, let us know. We'll be glad to get you the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, commissioners, you have Catherine Hensler at 9:15.
You see the. I have dangerous air or something. This area.
Yeah, somebody
yeah.
told me about that.
It was really bad.
Tell you,
And it was.
it was Saturday I left town or something, man,
Yeah.
that's so horrible, and I just think of what the people think, kind of like a man that moved here from somewhere that doesn't do that, or, because we're such a transit community, the military, and it was bad in Manhattan. I got out to my place, like 15 miles north, and it was half as bad out there.
It was really bad.
It was really bad.
Last night coming back in the city. Looked, I said, Is it raining up there? Cause it's sprinkled a couple times. Is that raining up here or is that just haze? Pretty soon we drove into, no, right. Smell it, all of just this cloud of smoke out of this place. Once we got to about 1 meter. I was walking, you know, turn off.
Everybody was burning the field.
I mean, well, you know, no wind.
No wind.
Which happens so seldom. But it's not too windy. But it's too bad.
Yeah.
They got it over.
That's right. And so it's better, you know. It had gotten really bad. And Friday was. Of course, I was a week on Friday. As long as they had a service. I always didn't make it. Didn't make it.
So my wife says she doesn't like April because you can't really enjoy the spring because of all the smoke, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that it serves a purpose.
When I was a kid out of Western Kansas, they did.
No, they don't. In Western Kansas, we don't.
You know, it's the-
You know, some from central Kansas, even central Kansas. We didn't.
It's not the old dress.
Fort Riley had two prescribed burns over the weekend. They were doing two correlation with everything else. Of course, that adds to it. I think on Friday we had three different wildfires going on Friday. So
I take right back. Seeing when they've been burned, it kind of looks neat, you know.
Mhm.
What's really neat is another technique. If we didn't get rain,
Oh, that'd
the green stuff.
That'll be beautiful. It's beautiful. No, it serves a purpose and, you know, if you don't, I mean, it's just kind of this area is a testament to, if you don't. You control, I mean, there's, you look at the original Fort Riley picture of that, there were no trees here, no trees. And the cedars are really invasive. There used to be a guy that early in my career coming to the commissioners annually.
Right.
And he would rant about how they're used to the trees, but the trees are not indigenous to this area and you need to eradicate the trees, you know, because they're causing problems.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it, you know, burning, I don't like the pollution and smoke, but I think it's way better for us than the chemicals. I know they're all just all that stuff, and I'm off into the streets, so that's what I really think is better.
my time, it's not been a real big issue except for 20. A lot of people, you know, obviously with COVID, is concerned about respiratory.
And that's in Leavenworth, there's a big hill on the west side, it's called Pilot Knob. And it's covered in trees now, but it's didn't. Originally it wasn't because, you know, I see the lightning and stuff start the wildfires that would burn everything off. And it's called Pilot Knob because when they were organizing wagons, the pilot, they'd stand up there getting people lined up, take off on the trails.
Would be a good point.
Yeah.
About the point where they organized mercantile to go back into Kansas City to sell.
Oh.
No, that's not that.
Or second, something, yeah, that hill, which you can see all the way across, we can see KCI.
Oh, really?
I can see plane. Once it got on the other side, it's pretty flat.
I always like that little drive across there to Easton and up to Platte City there, catching up at 29 and then shoot down to the airport there,
Yeah.
Platte City. driving through
That city
Platte
and
City.
Tracy.
Yeah.
Tracy.
Is it Easton?
No, Easton's the other, Easton's.
That's right.
Easton's
West.
Easton's west,
Yeah,
Leavenworth, and Weston is east.
that's right. I just remember, you guys drive by the McCormick distillery that they got there.
I should drive.
Yeah,
by
but
this
it's
building.
Yeah.
Winery.
Quick.
This is a joke.
Unfortunately, it's a little off the road there, so you have to have some long arms.
Right. Big football throw.
Mhm.
What about Kelsey? That was horrible. Come on, it's a good thing he's a tight end.
He he tried to throw out the first pitch at the Cleveland Guardians game the other day.
Oh, really?
Who is it?
Made it about 20 yards and bounced.
He couldn't even look at that.
It was horrible.
I just kind of went.
It was horrible. If I was gonna do that, I'd at least practice 100 times the way I didn't look bad.
Now you see, I mean, Trevor Lawrence did the same thing yesterday and threw a strike.
That doesn't surprise me. Kelsey's supposed to catch it.
But I don't think he would have been able to catch that either. Regardless of who it was coming from.
Lay down on the ground like this.
That was embarrassing.
I think the ground tried to miss that one just purposely.
Gosh, it was bad. It wasn't like it bounced a couple of feet in front of the plate. It was like maybe 20 yards.
It looked like it just left his hand and just was dead. I mean, it's like it was a weight or something.
So like a toddler throw? Like.
Oh, it was. It was.
Oh, no.
Okay, Catherine, I'm ready for you.
Wonderful. Good morning, commissioners. Catherine Kessler, Director of the Riley County Historical Museum, with our monthly staff report. In the month of March, our attendance numbers were 181 visitors at the museum, 35 at the Goodnow House, 18 at the Wolf House Museum. And again, while the Pioneer Log Cabin was at that time was closed for the season, we did have 3 visitors who walked in as we were there performing maintenance and cleaning for opening day, which was Sunday, April 2nd. And also, while we're on the topic of the Pioneer Log Cabin, they are currently open now every Sunday from 2 to 5, and will be open our stays and runs until October 29th. As far as volunteer hours for the month of March, again, that totaled 42.25 and were generated by 14 individual volunteers. Also, our Riley County Historical Society Board of Directors have begun logging their hours. When I submitted this report, we were at 48.5 hours. However, since then, it's up to 79 hours as the reports are coming in. So again, these are really important statistics in the event that we apply for grants in the future. So I'll be adding those to my report consistently from here on out. We also had 3 community service workers in March who assisted mainly with outdoor cleanup and some exterior cleanup, like as far as cleaning windows on the outside of the museum, and they logged in 27.75 hours. So we're very grateful for them. They have really helped keep our site look clean and tidy during the windy months. As far as education and outreach, on March the 8th, Curator Highsmith and myself attended the Riley County Township Officers meeting where we provided an exhibit on the electrical installation of lighting in Manhattan. And we really appreciate those opportunities because it gives us a chance to get out, meet our community, meet the community leaders, talk about the services and programs we offer at the museum. And best of all, it is free marketing for us. So we look forward to those additional opportunities in the future. On March the 20th, Curator Highsmith participated in our monthly K-Man in Focus program, and she spoke about Gertrude Dowd-Tetrick, the local woman who was an actress, musician, journalist, local personality, and did many things here in Riley County. It was also Women's History Month, and so we felt that a very fitting topic. This month we'll be participating in our K-Man in Focus interview on next Monday, and we'll be talking about historic preservation at the Wolf Photography Studio and how that's going to tie into Grow Green, even the fundraising that through the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation. Additionally, Curator Highsmith presented to Stony Brook on March 28th, and she did the same program about teacher. 20 guests attended that presentation. On March 16th, I provided a class for UFM. It was a non-credit course, and it was titled History of the History Keepers, and essentially it was the history of museums in America and how the Riley County Historical Society got started here in our community in 1914. There were 17 people who enrolled and 15 who attended. Now UFM charges a fee for that, but I first did that program pro bono as it was something as far as like our standard historical presentations. Curator Highsmith has been working with USD Creating Free in the upcoming field trip season, and the 4th graders are going to descend upon our properties this month. It's going to be very busy. Currently, we have 425 students and teachers signed up, and a little over 20 volunteers who have committed to helping us with that. So this group will be going to the Wolf House Museum, which is downtown. And they will be breaking into small groups throughout those days and rotating around the facility. So we'll be doing interactive historical presentations with the volunteers. We also have an additional group from Bluemont Elementary who cannot make the April field trips. They'll be coming in early May. Currently, there are 37 teachers and students that are scheduled to attend. They'll be touring the museum, the Goodnow House, as well as participating in a scavenger hunt. The Riley County Historical Society hosted their quarterly lunch and learn on March 22nd. The speaker was Derek Doty, who is also a staff of the museum. And he presented on the Pioneer Log Cabin, which was the Historical Society's first museum. There was a $15 fee and that covered lunch, but the presentation itself was free. And there were 43 guests. And the programs committee is currently looking at planning their next quarterly meeting, which right now is looking like it'll be on June the 20th at 7 p.m. It'll be held at Manhattan Public Library. And the presenter will be Marla Day. As you know, she is one of our museum trustees, and she's also a Riley County Historical Society former board member. So we're happy to have her present. She hasn't chosen the topic yet, but as always with Marla, it will be good. It will be pertaining to costumes as she's representing the K-State Costume and Textile Museum. This event will be free and move into the public, and we'll get marketing out very shortly once a few things are confirmed. Curator Highsmith also continues to work on the new exhibit, which will be installed in the museum's temporary gallery. It'll be replacing the women's suffrage exhibit that's currently up and has been up since 2020. Excuse me. The new exhibit is set to open on July 1st of this year, and it will cover the county's early medical practices. We have a pretty extensive collection of historic medical tools and implements. And so prior to COVID, the staff was planning on installing a temporary exhibit on that topic. And of course, COVID held that up, as well as a number of other things that have happened at the museum over the past 2 years. But we are excited to be able to install that exhibit at this time. The current exhibit, the women's suffrage, will be closing at 5 p.m. on Sunday, June 18th. So anyone who has not seen that exhibit that would like to, you have a little bit of a heads up, but we will be closing that in June permanently. Additionally, the final 2 weeks in June will be the time frame where we go to switch that exhibit. We will also be doing a little bit of maintenance on that space with the temporary exhibit gallery, which is also the hallway where the restrooms are. We'll try and do the majority of the work later on in the evening after hours or on Mondays or evening, mornings and weekends, simply because we don't want to impede any visitation disruption. So that space does have to remain open because of its a pathway to and from exits, but it's also where the restrooms are. So we'll take all of that into account, but we are excited to see some change in that exhibit area. So in the Department of Collections, curators Munger and Highsmith conducted a seasonal inventory of the Pioneer Log Cabin the week of March 20th to prepare for the open season. The process includes the same that just occurred earlier in the year down at the Wolf House. So essentially, we're taking a reconciliation of all of the items there, noting their condition, note if there's anything missing or needs to be repaired. And so they finished that process. And in addition to that, they have created interpretive labels that will now be installed at the Pioneer Log Cabin, which will help in guest experience. And in the month of March, 4 donations came in of items, that is, to the museum. Amongst those donations were 143 individual items. And Curator Munger was able to process 6 backlog collections, which totaled 71 individual items, which were accessioned and added to the museum collection. And just as a reminder, we're being very strategic in what we're accepting at the museum, simply because of our space issue. So any item that is accepted, it must be essential to telling the history of Riley County. In the Department of Archives and Library, Curator Glasgow managed 15 new incoming patron requests, and she also managed a number of backlog requests. These things can vary from genealogical research to digitization of photography collections, conducting research on historic properties, and locating county records. She continues, like I said, to follow up with outstanding requests that have been previously submitted. She has also been getting a few volunteers trained through the society to help her in the library, and that includes help with organization, cleanup, and research requests. It is an area that we feel has a great need for improvement, and those volunteers are well known to us, they're trusted, and they have a background working in museums, and so we're very happy to have their help on hand. So shifting over to building and grounds, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the historical society properties. Everything is going great at the museum as far as building and grounds, but we did have an issue again this month with the Pioneer Log Cabin, again owned by the society, sustained damage in one of its windows due to more vandalism. So we had the same situation occur back in August of 2022 where 3 panes were broken out. Fortunately, it's just one this time, but that is still a problem. So the incident occurred on, well, sometime between 5 p.m. on March 21st and 2 p.m. on March 22nd. We did make a police report through the RCPD. We're very fortunate enough, one of our staff members, Derek Doty, was present. Excuse me, when I came in to look at the damage, and he was able to secure that window pane until it can be repaired. We are running into the same issue that we have before. And at some of our other properties where many of these contractors were local, the estimate wait time is about 2 weeks minimum. And so we are still waiting on a contractor to get out there, unfortunately, but we are checking it regularly, and the preservation committee through the society has been notified. They are thinking and talking about some solutions as far as the security system option, as well as reinstalling screens across those windows. When the building was restored a few years ago, they made the decision not to include the screen simply for the historic context. They would not have been there originally. However, we are now finding that it might be a necessity, and we may have to move in that direction for security rather than the appearance of the building. And so just as an idea, that first incident in 2022 with the 3 panes that were broken, it cost the Historical Society $478.18. Now the society is self-insured for this building, and there were no costs incurred through the county. The society paid for all of that. And so I guess one of the things I do want to note positive about the log cabin is it did open on Sunday, April 2nd, and we have 29 visitors that came in that day. So we're very happy. That's great numbers for that site in one day. I think I mentioned this during my last report, but I will mention it again. We did hire a second site host. His name is Tony Connors, and he and Derek Doty both will be alternating as site hosts this summer, which we're in scheduling of Pioneer Log Cabin. I will speak a little bit about the Wolf Photography Studio. That's been a topic of conversation in many of my reports, and that is simply because the society is working to preserve that building. We've had some holdups, but we are hoping to move forward during the spring and summer. There's a number of different repairs that need to be made, including windows, doors, woodwork, trim, siding, painting, and unfortunately, we just found out there's a problem with the roof as well. And so this will be a conversation with the Society's Preservation Committee. They own this building. And so again, it will not be any expenses incurred on the county, but you should be aware that hopefully we will have some major activity going on this year at that site. We did hold a volunteer it was essentially an orientation over at the Rocky Ford Schoolhouse with Doug Tippin, the chair of the Rocky Ford Schoolhouse Friends Committee on March 10th. 7 volunteers attended and 2 staff people. And that's also a society building. They have a number of different items that need to be done there as far as interior and exterior repair and cleaning. So we're very fortunate to have those volunteers step up and help us maintain that site. We will be holding a work day sometime very soon, hopefully in late April. In which case we will send a message out to everybody. So if anyone would like to join us and help clean up that site and get it ready for the season, we would certainly appreciate it. I will skip through a few of these things just because I don't think they're super important. They're important, but I do want to mention that we have a couple special projects that are in the work that Curator Highsmith and myself are working on. These are all education programs. We were able to confirm that we will have a new event coming up on May the 9th. It'll be a fireside chat at Flight Crew Coffee. We are also still working on an interpretive garden at the Goodnote House and walking tours through the summer. And then lastly, before I sign off, I do want to remind everybody that April 21st, this year's Grow Green event through the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation. The society is participating in that, and it will be raising funds for the restoration of the Wolf Photography Studio. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Too.
Thanks, Commissioner. You have press conference at 9:30 with Mr. Einstein.
Okay. Okay, great.
Oh. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I want to invite you and the public out to a program this Saturday at 10 a.m. Park Hall. We're going to be talking about warm season vegetable gardening. Kind of skipping over spring since that's not working out as well. And it's 80 degrees and we're thinking warm season vegetables, but we need a consistent warm temperature before we plant. But 4-Hers are invited for sure. We are going to highlight growing corn at this program. Our largest vegetable for the 4-Hers this year will be the longest ear of corn. So we'll talk about how to do that. Big secret, you have to come out and find out. Water and fertilize, that's the big secret. But would encourage you to, if anybody's interested in warm season vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, melons, those types of crops. We'll be talking about that Saturday, 10 a.m. for our fall. Next weekend, the 22nd, that's on the 15th. On the 22nd is Party on the Planet. Sunset Zoo always has every year, and Master Gardeners, Extension Master Gardeners will have their booth promoting butterfly gardening. We have a butterfly garden habitat up there. They give away usually milkweed and maybe some other plants to encourage planting in home gardens for food sources for our butterflies / pollinators. That kind of all works together. So if you're able to participate in that event, be glad to have people come out and learn about pollinators besides the other things going on at the zoo for that day. Wanted to encourage people to come out and continue to garden. I'm still working on my rain dance, doing that nightly. I'll keep adjusting until I get it right, so we get some moisture.
I keep washing my car and that's no longer working, so you need to try harder. Pick up the slack, right?
Throw everything out there, see what happens.
This weekend, maybe.
Thank you. We heard it there. Thank you for that encouragement.
I'm doing a rain dance too. All right.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
week. Greg. Next Commissioner Don Ellerman, 9:35.
Well, I mean, from the seed eventually, yeah, but not from, no. You never know with you guys.
Okay,
Ready?
Yeah.
Morning, Commissioners. John Allen, Public Works, here this morning to ask to fill seasonal park labor positions. We have at least about four or six budgeted, depending on how many hours they end up staying throughout the summer. We had $4,600, $4,700 for this. In the past couple of years, we've not been too lucky to get more than maybe one. But we still like to try. Definitely budgeted, could be definitely used, or will be used if we can find some of it.
this entire annual cost, is that for 6? That's
For
74,000.
4,680 hours. So really, it doesn't matter. They could put 10 people in that and they could all work, whatever that would be, 400 hours. But really, it's that total hours, that's their limit. They wouldn't, I don't think, efficiently do 10 people, but that's why he's saying between 4 and 6 people. That'll end up being the total hours.
So how many did you have last year?
I think we had,
You know, it's 1.5. So
we started with two, or one left a little early in the summer. The other one we put on full-time, and then he went a little early to basic training for the service. Both of those that we had in the summer went into Air Force position, so they left that when they did. The year before, we had one or two, and one of them made full-time position, and he is still with us today.
And we're still able to take care of all of our summer and duties and other responsibilities just with the two.
I hope so. We combined the last few summers, and that's maybe even with open full-time position. And as next week, we should be full on full-time positions over there too.
I was gonna say, he might have just changed that has been a thing.
We'll be full for anyway.
I just wonder if we're able to make do with what we've had over the last couple of years, why do we need them?
Fair time is the biggest strain on labor that we have, is the month, couple weeks before and after fair.
But that's 1 week out of the year.
That's a month out of the year that we moving stuff in, moving stuff out, working the fair is, 1 week, but
And it's a month out of a 4-month period. I mean, they really are seasonal. So when we're talking about a year, we should probably talk about this job really only exists for that 4 months.
Right.
So not at 1/12, but 1/4.
I just wonder the need, considering the last few years, we haven't been able to hire more than a couple of people, if that's where our threshold is, and maybe we should be just aiming for that at this point in time.
just two or a couple. I don't think we're gonna get much more than that.
So then why are we trying to go for 4 or 6 is my point.
So basically that, again, I'd like to put it to hours. So I think you're saying like cut that down to like 2,500 hours approximately.
Right.
Which again, you might find somebody who can work 10 hours a week and somebody who can work 40 hours a week. But
Right.
you guys would choose whether or not that would be helpful to you. But you'd be the equivalent of 2 full-time.
No, and that's definitely something we can look at.
I think it's a standard issue across the board. I don't think it's just something that we're seeing here. I know cities struggling with those type of positions, and I know other counties are struggling with those type of positions, and I think you just have to understand what the reality of it is.
So I will point out in that aspect, we do pay $2 an hour in the city. They're still pretty low on that. And I'm not saying that we would start at like 1480 for
Right.
this position. So I do think this will be the first season that we've actually had that increase, a full increase rate. I'd like to see what would happen there. But I think probably the question you're asking that might be the most important is, do we need
Mhm.
4,000 hours, 4,600 hours? I guess I'm saying, I'm not as sure that we won't be able to fill them, that, but really is whether the need is there.
Well, if you don't need that many hours, where does the rest of the budget go? Back in, or is it
Yeah, it stays in budget.
Stays
Ends
in
up
the budget,
going At the
so-
end of the year, back in general fund,
general fund?
just tying up
But to
2,000
me,
hours worth of labor expenses that could be left in general.
that money would be better allocated someplace else than if you're not able to fill those hours. Just cost of materials, or just alone would.
I
Would take
definitely
care of
use
that.
it.
Yeah.
I'm
We
not
should-
sure arguing that I should just have the money, but yeah. I almost gave it back to general fund. I use it somehow or another, we'll use it.
So
I say we shoot for 2 instead of 4, and we cut that in half.
I think that's important what your intention is, because if you say you're approving it for 4680, we're gonna hold that in personnel. And then until the end of the year and go back to general, right? So it's not gonna just be open to anything else. If you say 2,500 hours, I mean, then we're not gonna hold that necessarily in personnel. And I think that's what
Yeah.
you're trying to get at. So I just wanted to be clear, because we'll have to look at those numbers.
So if we do, we're lucky enough to hire 4, 6, then we come back in and reapprove this.
Well, we wouldn't hire those
We
unless
would
we
be looking
gave
for
you.
the.
We would not. If you say that there's less hours, we would not hire for less hours and without your specific permission. Or if you, I guess what you're saying is if we leave it this way, we hire for as many as we get and the money goes back to general. That's also
Yeah,
how we've been operating the last 2 years.
that sounds reasonable. Right.
Any work we do, if we can get them on a blower or help with more cleanup or. More maintenance of landscape beds or clean up. One building around another building that's been neglected for a while. I mean, museum was definitely in need of some of that. Some of those others, that's what those positions are for.
And I would point out, just you all know this, but this would be the least expensive labor that you have. So if you could hire this to take something off of the full-time people. It would be less expensive than overtime. It'd be, less expensive than hiring a full-time person with benefits.
I think we've got them in the budget, try, like I said, we haven't. Depending on what we can find, and it's worth trying. Either I'm sure there's, like you said, there's always a deferred maintenance around these buildings that needs to be kept up.
Do we have one?
I'd like to see us cut it down. So,
Oh, I'd make a motion to approve filling position as presented.
I would second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed.
Nay.
Yeah.
Ask for the nays.
Okay, the ayes have it, motion passed.
So. Being full, saying we were being full in our parks department now left us with an opening in our custodial. department. So I am asking to request, or I'm requesting to fill a custodial 1 position. To replace. Yeah. The person that
Internal
is
promotion.
going to start in our parks department next. And this is the person that has been maintaining the public works department, transfer station. Just another. Stopped by another building too, I can't think which one it is. But he's got all our shop buildings, I think he goes up to the parks department, not just we. And out to the transfer station at least once a week.
Full-time job, right?
Full-time position.
With benefits.
With it.
We need to.
I go ahead, yeah, I go ahead, move to recommend the commission approve, filling the position.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to fill the custodial worker one position. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All three signed, please. Thank you, John. I have one more. Yep. And thank you for those two. And the last, or the next one I have here is a request to
It all have to go clear down.
2023 auction, purple wave auction to get rid of some excess equipment and things that Public Works, noxious weed and fire are willing to let go of and put it to auction. This be internet only. Purple Wave has been our go-to the last few years to do that. We feel we get good prices on Purple Wave. Don't think we quite have a date yet until we're looking for approval first, so we can get the advertising and stuff.
So this is only going to be equipment, it doesn't include anything like furniture and the things that could come upstairs.
No, not it yet. Just the equipment you have on your list here.
And you usually have a separate auctions like. I said miscellaneous desks, cabinets and stuff.
Yeah, depending on where we're at on storage.
How much,
space, I
how
think.
full it gets up
Yeah,
there.
how much we have there. And I can't tell you how full we are right now. I know we have some upstairs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other departments that are looking to get rid of some older stuff or broken stuff and able to, if they're able to replace it, however, we'll hold another auction on site like we have, I think every year or two. I think we've had one since I've been here, so about every other year, maybe.
Something we can pretty much do every year.
Yeah.
And don't really. Probably the easiest and most efficient way of. Reducing the old stuff
Yeah.
nowadays. And I guess I'll go ahead and move it to authorize staff to move forward and authorize Public Works to contract with Purple Wave Inc. of Manhattan to conduct an internet only auction sale.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize staff to move forward with the contract with Purple Works for surplus equipment. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Next commissioner, you have, I think, going at 9:50. Thank you, John. Thank you. Yeah. That's true. That is.
Yes, Clancy?
Morning, Commissioners. Clancy Holman, Riley County Councilor. Unless you have specific questions about the project list, I want to use my time to talk about a couple of those things, and I can turn to this after that. First, I want to talk a little bit about that portion of it that's in a car, or the national opioid settlements. We have some additional defendants that have settled, and those are named in the car. Those being it's five new businesses, and then I gave some of the history in the car. And the reason this seems, I'm sure sounds familiar, is we're getting distributions on a previous group. These are new. The five new ones are from a company called Teva, company called Allergen or Allergan, I don't know how they pronounce it. And then more familiar, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. These are additional settlements in the amount of several $1 billion totaling from those entities. And what it will do is increase it will be additional distributions that are coming to the state and then distributed by the state to local participating counties and cities. It's tough to give you any kind of a dollar amount because the nature of the amounts are determined by how many cities and counties participate, much like last night. And part of the participation is the local city or county gives up its right to sue. Some counties and cities across the country have litigated claims like this on their own, and if they wanted to participate in those settlements, they had to sign a release of any pending litigation, obviously, to participate in the settlements. So it's a little bit of a moving target in terms of we can't tell you exactly how much is going to be available. That'll be determined later on. And I suspect probably over another period of time. I don't know that it's going to be 18 years like the previous one. But again, that's going to be dependent on how many entities sign on, how many local and state governments sign on, release their claims, and agree to participate in the settlement. What I've got in front of you today is I'm asking permission, anticipating that you would want to participate. I'm asking that you authorize me to sign electronically those participation settlement agreements on your behalf. That's what we did the first go round. It's the quickest way to get it done in time for the upcoming deadline to participate. And it saves you from having at least one additional stack of papers to sign. It's about the best I can tell you. Be glad to try and answer any questions you've got about it, but if you don't have questions, I would simply ask that you choose one of those motions. The one I'm recommending is that you do authorize me to sign the release of claims because we have no pending litigation. There's obviously no downside to that. The downside would be not participating in these settlements for whatever amount is eventually distributed. If you have questions, that's what I'd ask them to do.
Will there be more settlements coming up, or is there more being litigated? Or
I asked that. Now, I think this is it. That's their expectation, at least at the Attorney General's office. Point of contact has been really good. Gentleman named Chris Teeters, who's an assistant AG, who's had the pleasure, and I use air quotes, of managing the first go around of those settlements in the state of Kansas. And thankfully, he's also handled these. But I asked him that question. His expectations, this is it. There isn't likely to be another group of settling defendants. There may be others out there still litigating for all I know, but probably the last of any settlements.
But you said the time frame hasn't been set on this one.
in terms of payment or distribution, because again, it won't. That's all probably, I'm assuming that also is related. The time frame will probably depend as well on how many are actually participating, how much money do they have to pay out in terms of settlement. Simply don't know right now. You won't know that till after April 18th. At some point. But I will provide you that information as soon as it's available.
Well, then I'll go ahead and make a motion, recommend the board authorize council to sign the attached documents and any related follow-up documents on the board's behalf.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize council to sign on behalf of you as recommended. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, commissioners. I have one sheet of paper for you, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the virtual legislative conference here in 10:30. This is the agenda that I prepared after. I didn't think of preparing this until it was after the deadline to actually make it part of the packet, but it's pretty straightforward. I did send it to the delegation. So it's a lot of surprise.
This one I got, let me see if it's the
I
same.
didn't send that. And then, so,
Yeah.
yeah. You know what?
No, well, I'll take it.
I bet. Yeah, that's one of the things I just printed off.
Was it? Okay.
This morning.
Well, I thought it was worthwhile to talk about this a little bit. Now, this isn't this, we've only got an hour. And I did not, from the beginning, expect this one to be as detailed as our usual annual legislative conference. But I did want to highlight those issues. I wanted to give them a reason to understand. The reason I sent it out to delegation, so they understand this is a guided conversation, not simply stream of consciousness on either side, because I don't think that's going to be, that would not be the choose. I also, because I had some good feedback from at least one member of the delegation. Hey, this House Bill 2002 no longer, for example, if you look at that first item under A, House Bill 2002 has been changed. Of course, they were all changed last Friday. I mean, not everything's changed. For the most recent action was last Friday when they worked until 4:30 Friday morning. And so there's no way to tell in a real timely way what's actually still in play. That was the reason why, quite frankly, knowing that I didn't realize it would be the Monday after that, but that's why we wanted to have this late in session. So we can find out from them, and if they don't know, which some of this they may not be, perhaps they haven't heard yet, or can't be certain of the status of the current piece of legislation. Perfectly understandable, but this gives us time during these 3 weeks for them to find that out and to give maybe update us on where some of this is, or tell us maybe there's something new out there that you're not aware of. They think you need to know about. So I don't, for my purposes, it doesn't matter to me what they call a particular piece of legislation. House Bill 2002. One of the primary things, it had plenty of provisions in it, maybe that were not great. What the board zeroed in on was the impact of the sales tax on local sales taxes, retailers, countywide sales taxes on food sales. And we were able to show that there's well over $1 million in damage to Riley County or loss if that had been in place, if such an exemption had been in place on our 2 existing sales taxes in 2022. This goes along with what I've talked about at some prior legislative conferences, is being able to let the delegation know what the impact is, what the real dollar impact is on Riley County. It was seemingly great change. Who wouldn't want to pay fewer sales taxes when they go to the grocery store, they go to the convenience store? Well, that's fine if that's what you want to do, but you need to understand that the impact is going to be just from those 2 types of stores in Riley County. It's over $1 million impact. And that's a reduction in the funds available when those sales taxes, when a retailer sales tax is proposed and approved by the voters, routinely projections are made about revenue it's going to come in. And if you start reducing that through legislation, that matters. And so they at least need to know that that's what's going to happen. So on 2002, if we hear that, well, that, because it has apparently been pulled out of House Bill 2002, as I understand it. Now, I don't know that it just, as we've said before, nothing ever really dies in the legislature until they go home, not on break, but when they're gone. Until the following session. And I don't say that to criticize, I'm just saying we don't know. And if we don't talk about those things that matter to the board now in their substance, not what number they're assigned, remind the delegation that this is still a bad idea from the board's point of view. You submitted unanimous written opposition testimony to Senate Bill 248, which is what this originally was. And whether it's in House Bill 2002 or it's in some other piece of legislation, presumably your opposition still counts, still needs to be taken into account by the delegation when they're looking at legislation that's pending, or something that's close to that, a concept that is of some other tweak to local retailer sales taxes. Maybe it's not on food. If they have this information and they know where you're coming from, that can be useful to them, I would say. So similarly, the second item, B, Senate Concurrent Resolution 1611, apparently was not considered on the House side at all, but this is what started as Senate Concurrent Resolution 1610. It was a 3% valuation ceiling on real property, valuation, not taxes, on valuation. And it would have been statewide. So 1611 changed that and made it 3%. Well, the point was excuse me,
1610.
1610. Yeah. Well,
1611 makes it 4%.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry if I said,
Yeah.
Okay. This one that is here, and again, may be dead, maybe it is. But the point is the substantive plan to put a ceiling on those valuations, that's what really matters. No matter where it shows up in legislation that's in front of the Senate or the House. So that's the point of talking about it here, that there is an impact, a local impact if you do that, and there's a statewide impact. Because it's one of those things, if you artificially freeze values, then the properties, as our county appraisers pointed out, you freeze valuations and don't let the market determine that, which is what our current system is intended to do. Then those properties at the lowest end, which over time will have, they're in an area of a city, say, an area of a county that has not rapid growth. Maybe it's 5%. Who knows what it is. But you have other areas that may be in a higher end portion of the market where property values, because of sales, are routinely 10% above. An increase of 10% in valuation, or 8% or 7%. The people that are getting the benefit of that, those properties that are getting the benefit of that freeze, are not the people at the lower end of those areas where the values are not increasing above that level. That's going to lead eventually. We would submit on the staff side that will eventually lead to statewide reappraisal, because that's not a uniform and equal rate of assessment or taxation over time. That it just, the math doesn't. So, because you've got one group of properties, similar properties, that are undergoing vast differences, or being subjected to vast differences in their valuation, in the rate of their valuation, and therefore their rate of taxation.
Let's see, I heard that they weren't going to do either of these and do a flat tax instead of these things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ideas, one of the concepts. Maybe that's what will happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, who knows? That's the problem. The who knows part is the problem. Because if we don't talk about these things with them, then they don't know what your position is. And I think they need to be reminded. So, because they're getting hit from all sides. They're buried in information. Yeah. Probably this session even more than in recent ones, just because so many bills were introduced so quickly at the front end of the session. And again, that leaves all those shells available for something to be stuck in them and run through and approved without a hearing. But yeah, I hear what you're saying about them. Yeah, that is one of the concepts, and one of the many concepts that was discussed. And what I'm trying to have this, what I think, at least what I'm encouraging, what I think would be to the board's interest is we kind of talk about these primary things, just because, I mean, that's why I've structured it this way, have that guided conversation. Then there is a portion of the agenda, of course, devoted to additional priorities at this moment. And what they can tell us, if they see something out there that we need to be aware of, apart from this, that's coming our direction. I'm not saying there isn't. They may have heard something, maybe they heard something in those long debates that were going on until 4:30 last Friday morning. So. And the last item is simply put one positive thing in there, two negative. 162. That's the Riley County Unincorporated Area Nuisance Abatement Act, and member of the delegation responded to me today that thought that there needed to be better coordination. I was able to tell them that thank you for the information, but quite frankly, it's safe where it is right now. And it's likely to be, our belief is it for procedural reasons, it's going to be dealt with by the legislature, by that committee where it's sitting next session. And really, that's where we need to have the real push with other counties potentially joining in, that kind of thing. I know this will probably be part of your discussion at the with other commissioners at the Kansas County Commissioners Association meeting. I think that's a good opportunity to describe this particular bill and find out if they're interested in joining in on it, because the more we have, the better. Next session, the more information they get about this being a problem, the legislature might be able to solve. That's it. That's what I wanted to describe to you in terms of the legislative conference. Do you have anything in particular you want to hit with them? And I'll just lead off with your permission, each of these items and talk about them just a little bit. And then ask them to tell us what we need to do basically on the first two to kind of be protected against potentially those same ideas coming back in a different form.
And I know, like you said, the write-ups on these change every day. And some, it's one thing on that 4% valuation. At one point, it said something about, but it didn't apply to if houses sold, then 4%, it wasn't limited. It went to the new value when a house sold.
Yeah, I remember there being a provision along.
Which that means that really makes it mess, because then if your neighbor sells his house, all of a sudden his taxes are going to be 20% higher than yours because you didn't sell. And that's, like I say, the unequal wouldn't. It wouldn't. The whole thing's.
Well, it
doesn't
just
make
makes
sense.
one of those things. It's hard not to. How do you? I mean, on its surface, it sounds attractive, but then you start looking. Okay, what happens if we do this? And that's where a lot of these ideas.
It's trying to deny reality. Well, you know,
Well,
the appraisals are not arbitrary. I mean, but that's because isn't it the state law saying that it has to be valued at market value? So this
Absolutely.
basically goes against the other statute.
Yeah, largely. I mean, it says there's more obviously than that in it because there's questions about condition of the property. There's all those things that are in it.
Yeah.
But the market is probably the most powerful driver. I mean, that's where.
Well, I say market and condition and all that, but if it's froze, that it doesn't.
If you're going to ignore that.
Yeah.
That sound, but it doesn't benefit, and for the reason I described, it doesn't benefit everybody the same way.
No.
You could easily have comparable properties that otherwise would be used to determine their relative value. For purposes of taxation, and that's not going to happen. But the one that's going to have the best reason to cheerlead about it is the person in the booming area, because they're safe. And then any properties that are in the area that's not as popular, that doesn't have dramatic growth, they're going to be paying more and more of their share. Well, their share is going to get bigger and bigger. It's the same old argument. It's, you know, if you want to change the amount of revenue that's available, then you better decide what services you want to go without or be reduced. They have to end them all, but I mean, don't just say, well, take away all the fat. Where's the fat? Tell us, identify that so we can have that discussion. That's all I have unless you have questions. Thank you. Next, Commissioner John Owen at 10:10. About 30 seconds. All your time, all of it, all of it. It looks like I've been needing all my time today. Good morning again, commissioners. John Allen, Public Works. With my monthly project update. Go through down here, a couple of them pretty quick. Hidden Creek Bridge, our culvert, we're working on finishing up easements, and so hopefully we can get that out to bid soon, as well as Union Road and Flat Rock Road culverts. Those are all but good. We're working on bid documents right as we speak and trying to figure out a bid date for those. Fancy Creek has taken some different turns over the last couple of years. That's the one with the historic truss bridge that we were told we had to preserve. And we were working on finding, taking the bridge off and sending it on the right of way next to the road. Of course, the Corps has some issues with doing that. And the Historic Preservation Office kind of took a different turn where if we document, we may be able to remove the bridge and move on. So we are in the process of documenting the bridge and submitted that to Historic Preservation Office for their approval. And once that is there, we will go back to the Corps for their permit. We can't do anything with the permit and then put it out to bid because it's ready to go. That's next on the Paper Valley Bridge. That has been completed, and as noon today is scheduled to be opened up to traffic. And let's not say we're finished with the work yet, but the bridge is open, asphalt is laid, guardrails up, and it will be open at noon, and then we'll start working on removing the detours, the shoe fly detours around it, and setting up signs that we're good to go. We probably have another week or so to clean up the shoe flies in the channels that they went across. Parks Department done seasonal work, pre-emergent, in the landscape beds, reseeded the football fields at Fairmont Park. Did some planted a tree or two at the flagpole island or at Keats Park. Looking at other shrubs and landscaping to put in there that yet this summer. And this week they'll start a project re-leveling the baseball field at Keats Park. Bringing in some dirt and leveling it out for play. I think over the years, when you grade or drag the fields, you get a hump between the outfield and the infield, and this will help remove that. Operations crew. We opened up asphalt overlay bids and Children Construction was the low bid. We opened up bids for sealing wall. With Ergon being the low bid, and those were approved last Thursday. Paper Valley Bridge open today, gravel road maintenance and hauling gravel to roads where they're needed. Done by the gravel crew. The asphalt crew was out trimming trees, cleaning ditches, and doing some shouldering along certain roads where they felt they needed it. As the weather's warming up, we're going to do less and less of this, but crack filling ahead of our sealing projects. And so we get some of those road maintenance, keep the water from getting into the subgrade underneath the pavement. And this week or next, we'll be looking at installing the entrance to the North County EMS station. Public Works crew was to lay the culvert and then put the entrance in, and as the contractor gets close, they'll be doing the pavement on top. Some good news. Our 2020 truck has been built and shipped to the dealer for put the box on and the snow equipment, the salt spreader and the plow and lights. When we see that yet, I'm not sure, hopefully in the next couple months. And we're told the other 2 trucks should be built later this month. Later this month, we're hoping. Those have been a long time in the works. Headquarters station, we're continuing to meet with Arch Images and VHS about working through budgets. Working with getting VHS a contract, they've been kind of working without one right now. But we're getting that to them hopefully soon. They need conversation with Clancy and we'll hopefully get that completed. I'll let David later on to explain their. Not sure when he's gonna put that on your agenda to discuss more about the headquarters station. Back to the North County Station, Schultz Construction was low bid. That contract you signed last week too. And so waiting on their schedule and the architect to schedule the notice to proceed to be issued and then groundbreaking ceremony. Still working on design of University Park treatment plant to the lagoons. We had installed a flow meter into that to kind of get a good gauge on the flows coming into the treatment plant. We were hoping on a good rain in those 2 months that we had it out there, and of course we didn't get so much. A rain would tell us how much inflow into the pipes we're seeping in and to help us better design. How much a little bit over designer we should plan on for that into the lagoon side. So we extended that another month and hopefully we'll get a good rain here soon. After that, I'm not sure what we do. Working on grants. We have been working on a USDA grant, KDHE state revolving fund. That's along with some grant or loan forgiveness. At the KRWA conference. There's a little bit more money in each of those buffers coming in, especially the state revolving fund has more money, which has also increased the loan forgiveness. So we're working on getting those in there as well as that Tuesday. So it'd be what, 2 weeks ago tomorrow, the state opened up applications for a small town water and sewer grant. I believe Matt with Whit O'Brien's is working on that. I've been giving them some information as I get it. There's a few more things looking at it that we need to get to him too for that. I think University Park for sure has a good chance of getting some of that grant money. I'm not gonna guess at how much, but we meet every qualification that's asking for that project. Keith's project may be a little bit more tricky, but I think it still meets the qualifications that grant's asking for. So cross your fingers and we'll get in those in on time. I think the deadline for application for pre-app is June 3rd. Open positions. We have an offer out for traffic control tech. We had an offer last time and the guy never showed up. So we made another offer and hopefully he's coming. Still more dependent. We hope so. And the facility, parks facility and grounds tech was filled by one of our custodians. And so that position is now open because we talked about before. Some of our building projects, the courtroom carpet project and Judge Manister's report is complete. And the treasurer's office, their lobby waiting area floor has been laid. The whole office has been painted and today they're working on So hopefully by the end of the week, we may be starting to move them back into place. Quick turnaround.
Mhm.
Some of the other things we're working on Clancy, with Clancy on the transfer station agreement with Han. Working with the city and some ideas with the Marlette Avenue. Maybe we can discuss it. I don't know how much time I have, not much. I have a memo coming maybe next week, I hope. If I can get on schedule about what my ideas are to do there. I've talked to that Mr. Treese about the Overlook Park in Ogden, and now I have something for you about that. A few years ago, we signed a lease agreement to extend the Adibus site into Public Works another 25 feet. They're getting closer to bidding that project. So just let you know that's coming up. And High Plains Ranch Road Benefit District Project, the patching overlay.
Mhm.
It looks like they're finished. I haven't got word that they think they're done. If everything was patched and overlaid last week, and at towards the end of the week, they finished their shouldering that they were required to do. Our guys went in and added gravel along the radiuses at the highway. And so it looks like it's all done to me. I haven't had official word that they think they are. We may want to go in there and dress up some stuff and have not just we plant the grass on the shoulders. But other than that, I think we're about ready, and that should be all but finished. So any questions, comments? That's it.
Right, we're good.
Hey, John. Next question, you have the virtual legislative conference at 10:30.
It's a busy day.
Hey, yeah, well, for Monday,
I
it
just,
was pretty slow earlier.
Yeah.
Picked up. So how are you?
I just.
Surprised to see you.
I know, it's I want, really terrible.
Junctions in the post. He's the mayor guy. He's the one that's spoken. They're having us spread out. And
Yeah.
help cover stuff. So this morning I was over and talked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
This project, okay, I do active was opposed. I thought there was something and so popular. Or no, I guess there's a lot of that, which is how it can be weird.
You stay.
Oh, even better. You really don't,
Just for the.
You don't know how to use it very careful.
I have this.
You always wanted.
I appreciate it.
Okay. I said I wouldn't have to do it.
Well, it's not, I can say it's. I just wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no, not me.
That's two more and that'd be the same thing.
Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Don't we want to ask questions, you know.
No, they should
No,
be able
no.
to hear you from there.
Yeah, they should be just like anybody else who's attending.
They should be able to hear you from their microphone here.
Oh, okay.
They've been given a link just the same as anybody else in the county within the organization.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, that's okay. Perfectly legitimate question. It's one of them that I asked,
Yeah.
only on that one issue. How much I know.
You want us to turn the lights off now?
I don't think you're gonna need to.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
If you need to, like, yeah, just let me know.
It's hard to see this with the fire.
Turn them off.
Power count. Power count.
Oh. Sure.
Are we ready?
Mhm.
Morning again, commissioners. This will be the virtual legislative conference. Style that is a follow-up to our annual legislative conference, of course, we had last December. And I would ask the board if you have any welcoming remarks to make for the delegation. All right, well, welcome, members of the delegation. Thank you for attending. I appreciate that. I'm going to assume that whenever you want to, any feedback you want to give at any point, any questions you want to ask, feel free to go ahead and unmute. I don't think I have to do that up here at the podium. We're going to find out because I don't have IT here standing beside me and
No.
limited technology. But again, welcome for showing up. I appreciate that. I did send out to each of you. I hope you had a chance to see it. I know you had a very, very late work day on Thursday leading into Friday morning. But I did send out a very brief agenda. I view this as kind of just a guided conversation on some items, primarily three items that we've got on the agenda, those being House Bill 2002, Senate Concurrent Resolution 1611, and then Senate Bill 162. I'm less concerned, personally, and I think my client feels the same way. I'm less concerned about what these actual bill numbers, what status they're in right now. I'm interested in having a conversation with you, and I know my client is, about why the county's taken the position it has on the substantive issue represented by these bills. Because as you know, it could show up still again, if not later this session, it could show up next session. And I think we're ahead of the game if you know exactly where the board stands on these issues. And I do have a portion of the agenda too, of course, specifically at the end of this discussion of these three items for any information you can give my client about what you see coming their way. Maybe at the end of this session, maybe next session, but particularly this session. When you return after the next 3 weeks, if we need to be aware of something, we would appreciate you letting us know that today. So let's start with House Bill 2002. What that did include, and I think it no longer is in there as of Friday's work, it originally included an item that used to be Senate Bill 248. Senate Bill 248 was the elimination of the both the state and local sales tax on food. Senate Bill 248 eventually, as I understand it, went the way of the dodo, at least in that form. And the provision that did relate to local retailers' sales taxes being exempt for food sales, that went away also. But then it reappeared in House Bill 2002. That's why that bill's on the agenda today, because the board continues its unanimous opposition to that concept, to any bill, at least that we've seen so far. I'm not saying there couldn't be one crafted that was worth supporting, even despite what they feel is a defect in a concept of eliminating the local retailer sales tax on food. That could be supported, but right now, my client, the Board of County Commissioners, is unanimously opposed to doing that in any form of a current bill that may come your way. And we want to be upfront about that. The reason being is I sent you a spreadsheet during the session when Senate Bill 248 was still in play, which pointed out that we had information that only on 2 NAIC codes in Riley County, supermarkets and convenience stores, just those 2 types of businesses within Riley County, if the local retailer sales tax on food were eliminated, what would it matter to Riley County? Well, it would amount to over a $1,248,000 loss in 2022. That matters because, again, remember the example, we're only talking about 2 of those industrial codes, supermarkets and convenience stores, and certainly food is sold elsewhere. So we were intentionally being very conservative in what we provided you in terms of impact. This matters not just for food sales tax, but I would hope you would be receptive to our arguments that, well, any tweak to local retailer sales tax that undermines the revenue of local government is something that ordinarily the county is going to oppose because those are the operating funds of the county. And even something that sounds like a great idea, like paying less for groceries, maybe it has an unintended consequence that we would encourage you to be aware of. Next, I will talk just briefly about Senate Concurrent Resolution 1611. That, as I understand it, is probably gone, but the concept may still be out there. It sprang from Senate Concurrent Resolution 1610. Both of those had a limit statewide on the increase of valuation by the local county appraisers of real property. And Senate Concurrent Resolution 1610 said that those values, and again, I want to emphasize values, not taxes, values could not increase each year beyond 3%. Senate Concurrent Resolution 1611 changed that and said, well, they couldn't increase more than 4%. The number there is not so important as the concept opposed by this board. Talking with staff, talking with our county appraiser, hearing from the county appraisers, statewide group of appraisers, what this inevitably leads to is if you put a ceiling on the valuation, not the taxes, the valuation of real property by mass appraisal, which is driven by the market. It's not a perfect system, anybody would say, but it's driven by the market and sales in that market. If you limit artificially the amount of increase in value that the market is requiring properties be valued at, then you're causing an inequity, both short-term and long-term. What you do first is if there's an area in that county that is a real, what people would call a hot resale market for real properties, maybe the values are increasing 10%, maybe they're 8%, maybe they're 7%, whatever that is, but it's a hot area. So that's what the market says those sales, the market value of comparable properties should be. But if you look at an area in that same community that is not a hot market, maybe the condition of the properties is a little bit less. Or maybe it's some new homes or new residences are being put up in that area where that market still, the sales in the area are not yet reflecting that 7% or 8% or whatever growth in the hotter area. Well, over time, what's going to happen is if you artificially inflate that, if you artificially restrict what the market would tell you the value increase ought to be for those comparable properties, those properties on the lower end in the market that's not hot are going to pay more and more and more of their quote share of the property tax burden. Those properties in the hot market are going to over time pay less and less as that growth in the value of those properties continues, potential for however long it continues. They're paying less and less of their share. That is a recipe for statewide reappraisal eventually. Because the Kansas Constitution currently requires that there be a uniform and equal rate of assessment and rate of taxation. And part of the really underlying problem here is if the state wants to have an impact on the taxes paid, when you tamper with the value of properties, and we have a system which has not been done away with, which says that market drives it, then you're undermining the ability of that system to reflect a uniform and equal rate of assessment. That's just going to happen. It's just a question of when that will happen. But over time, history shows it's going to happen. And that matters because statewide reappraisal is a real drainer of resources at the local government and state level. If you have to go back and revalue properties because they're so far, the values are so far out of whack on comparable properties across the state, it is a gigantic undertaking, as it was in 1989. And that's something that ought to be avoided, at least in my client's view. Finally, I do have one item here that is not something negative, I would say, in terms of something to have to present and say this is a bad thing. Senate Bill 162. That is the county's unincorporated area nuisance abatement. We modeled it, as I told the delegation, on Senate Bill 51 or 52, whatever it was, that Sedgwick County eventually got passed a couple sessions ago. And that had a sunset provision in it. And it was made law so that Sedgwick County can go into the areas that legislation covers, and they can clean up nuisance properties that are not being cared for. And it's exempts ag, all right, does not apply to agricultural properties, but residences in the unincorporated area. Sedgwick County can clean up if they can't get cooperation in cleaning up a dilapidated residence in the unincorporated area. Then if they can't get that done voluntarily, then they have the ability to do what's called self-help. That county can expend the money to go ahead and clean it up on their own. And then there's a lien on the property until those cleanup costs are recovered. There's a very detailed process, I will tell you. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but go back and take a look at it when you're really at a loss for something to put you to sleep, because there's a lot of safeguards, as there should be, in it. This is not something that a county can that Sedgwick County can go out and just pull a name out of a hat and go clean up the property. There's a very detailed process. They've got to go to court. They've got to get a finding that the property is a nuisance. All that has to be determined. And there's an appellate procedure in it for the property owner. There are plenty of protections in there. So I don't want you to think this is some kind of wild overreach by Sedgwick County or anyone else. The reason it's important you understand what the Sedgwick County bill said was we modeled our bill, Senate Bill 162, is a carbon copy of the Sedgwick County legislation, because we figured, well, if the legislature is willing to give that kind of short-term, basically, opportunity of the county to show it can responsibly act under those rules, those detailed rules, including an appellate procedure for the property owner. And it can do so before the legislation sunsets, which in this case, it gave the Sedgwick County 3 years. That matters for what I'm going to describe here in a moment. Their legislation will sunset if it's not extended by the legislature. It will sunset next July of 2024. We did the same thing in our version of the bill. In our Senate Bill 162, we gave ourselves a proposed 3-year experimental term, if you will, where the legislature can watch and listen and see if Riley County is going to responsibly use that and decide whether or not it deserves to be extended at that time. We thought that was only fair. And we think that was a successful approach to the legislature, because the Senate committee, I would say it was a very good hearing. I was there. We had testimony from another county. I believe it was Crawford County, who came out and said that they also were in favor of that concept, and they had their own information they presented to the committee. Committee's questions in the Senate were good. And what we eventually found out was, well, it wasn't going to be worked this session. But the plan is, at least at this moment, on the part of the committee, is that, or the committee chair, that when Sedgwick County brings back its request, presumably next session, to extend the legislation beyond its sunset provision next summer, that there will be kind of an opportunity to present this as a package to the legislature. Is it worthwhile to give another county this authority, or maybe does the legislature want to simply enact uniform legislation that gives this authority to every county? That's also something that's in play. One of the issues that will be covered in those hearings is because Sedgwick County is designated as an urban area county. That's one of the provisions that's not in our bill because we're not so designated. But one of the things we will have to justify, or not so much justify, we'll have to explain to the Senate committee next year, I'm assuming, is if we do an urban area designation for Riley County for this purpose, what does that mean? I believe that if you designate us as an urban area, it deprives Riley County of nothing. It simply gives the legislature the ability to enact legislation that's for one specific county that is not subject to allowing that county to charter out from it. Because under the Constitution, if it's an urban area, the way I read it, it says that is by virtue of its enactment. You call it, the legislature calls a county an urban area county, it enacts specific legislation. That is uniform legislation, even though you're only giving it to one county. Ordinarily, that would mean that the county could charter out, and this would prevent that. So it's another means of oversight by the legislature that, quite frankly, Riley County is willing to undergo in the interest of cleaning up some of the problem properties that other methods have not been able to do. So, thank you for being patient and listening to me on those things, those items. I would be glad to try and answer any questions you've got about it, or we can also entertain at the same time. Any priorities at this moment that you see we ought to be aware of coming our direction when you return in 3 weeks.
Hey, Clancy, maybe I'll just go first. This is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
As I sent, so everybody will know, I sent Clancy a note before the meeting about what I thought I guess the final action on some of these bills had been. So in 2002, we did amend all the local taxes out of that legislation. But, you know, what we have to be careful of here, Clancy and commissioners, is that I think everybody from in every seat thought that we had to do something with property taxes. I think as we all walked around campaigning, this is maybe the number 1 or 2 issue we heard. So we have to be a little bit careful about being too bold on property tax. You know, if the citizens' number 1 issue is a reduction of property tax, then we've got to find some solutions here. Nonetheless, the elimination of the food tax had 2 components, and one, as I said, the local sales tax initiative was amended out. The other one that we did in commerce was amend in a piece that said if this is impacting on a Star Bonds area, that will be compensated by the state. So again, as we look at property tax, we need to be a little bit careful. And I understand what you said about uniformity. I mean, that's obviously governed by what we're doing with our appraisers. There was another bill, and I didn't look up what maybe somebody else knows, what the eventual ending of that was, but we had some training, mandated training for appraisers. Does anybody remember what that ended up to be?
It's an House Bill 2002.
That's the one we included, right?
Right.
Yeah, there was a provision in there.
So that'll help a little bit. And I know that the requirement is that we have the appraised value be within plus or minus 10%. That is the overall appraisals be within plus or minus 10% of the sales. So that kind of is a self-leveling process. And then on 162, when we considered that for Sedgwick, if you remember, there was an enclave that was out in Sedgwick County that was kind of its own little municipality, if you will, but I think was unincorporated and therefore had no ability to regulate. So it is quite a bit different than the Riley case. And one of the things that I think we need to consider is the home rule for counties, because it's a little bit different than for cities. And, you know, I was talking to the League of Municipalities just the other day about this, and I'm not sure they're fully up to speed. So we need to get them and your Association of Counties on board for 162 as we move that through both the Senate and the House. And when I talked to Will Carpenter, probably just maybe a month ago, nobody had been over to coordinate. You know, I handed him and sent him a copy of the thing, but you know, there's very little coordination there. So if we want that to happen during next session, we've got to be a little bit more aggressive and really scrutinize that bill to make sure it says what people will be able to digest in the committees. I'll just end it there. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Clancy, this is Yusha. I'm going to pick up kind of where Mike ended so we can get in a few minutes. Thank you for holding this legislative update. I always think it's better to have it in your recess time is probably one of the best times since we haven't taken final action on everything just yet. So just a few things that you mentioned. House Bill 2002, it does have a couple of other tax exemptions. One of them is for the Area Agency on Aging. That's been a collaborative effort. Sydney's been working on it for quite a while, and then Representative Titus, as well as Representative Carlin Dodson and everybody else have signed on in the House. We signed on in the Senate, and we were able to move it through. It's been in the works for almost, I don't know, for as long as I can remember, 10 years, maybe even. So that's a plus. The other part of this is I'm on the taxation committee, and Senator Tyson is very much into lots of different types of bills and resolutions. She's the one who came up with the revenue net neutral. So in House Bill 2002 is also a provision for 1 year where the state will pay for the mailing of the property valuation notice for revenue neutral. And the other one there is to see how much we can do online. So they want to remove the state finances from it and try to see if we can get residents to sign on online for those valuation notices instead of sending them by mail. I don't know how effective it will be. A lot of people still don't have internet, and a lot of people are very apprehensive of doing things online, especially about property valuations. So that's to be seen. I think the other notice is they changed how your property valuation notice will look when you get the revenue neutral notice. It will say there is an increase in your property tax. It won't have anything about ad valorem or anything. So they will see it front and center, and we'll see how that works out. I think most of the provisions in 2002 I was okay with. They weren't too bad. You brought up Senate SCR 1611. It takes 2/3 vote for a constitutional amendment. This is subject to be on 2024 general election in November for voters to vote on. It passed, the 2/3 vote got for the 4% valuation increase. And there is a lot of issues with it. I think one of the things, well, many things, but one is if they keep it at that same level, you spoke to fair market value. If a home next to you, it's always great when you want to sell your home. So when people are looking to sell their home and they see, oh, property taxes have not been that high on that house, and when they buy it, it will be at fair market value, and that will increase substantially depending on when you bought it. So it's almost this, and the other part is it's just kind of a false sense of security, thinking it's not going to get higher than 4%. But people need to understand valuations are going to continue to grow. There's mill levies, there's all types of other factors that fall into it. So it should not be a measure where people think that's all it's going to be. I'm not going to get an increase. Each community reacts very differently as far as what they need for their police department, fire department, or city services. So I think that's something that needs to be discussed at length. The other bills that you mentioned, there was one, I think, about the private sector companies against government competition for some of childcare, rec centers, and restaurants. I think that's still going to be difficult for some of us to vote on, mainly because all of these property taxes, some of them have received IRBs and sales tax exemptions. And now if they receive property tax exemptions, that again dilutes the revenue sources that are coming into our coffers for cities to function and maintain. I don't think city governments or school districts or county agencies have ever been, quote unquote, in competition with the private sector. I think when we try to build things, it's for the greater good of the community. The other piece to this is there's a lot of sales tax ballot initiatives that were passed where if we start removing sales tax and all of these things from some of these entities, what voters voted on would the revenue would also decrease the projections that we anticipated for some of these agencies. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. Property taxes are always talked about. And I think there's lots of exemptions at a variety of levels for residents, corporations, and nonprofits and everything of that sort. At the same time, if we cut a lot of these measures, there won't be enough revenue for local communities to function. I think it was, I don't know if one of the Senate bills came out where for the flat tax, that also decreases the state general revenue about $1.5 billion over a period of time. So we need to be cautious when we look at some of those measures. I will leave it there and I will wait for feedback and give others a chance to speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusha.
Yes, I have a couple of things I can add. One is House Bill 2082 has passed and both houses, and authorizing the counties to create a code inspection enforcement fund. The existing county equipment reserve fund would include purchases of technology and technology services. Also, we had a vote on the vacant property. Was that the, I'm sorry. Where'd it go? It wasn't enacted, it passed the House. Is that the dark store theory piece, or is that another issue? I don't know. It did.
If I can jump in just a minute, I don't think that's got anything to do with dark store.
What?
I don't think that one has any, that is not related to dark store.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, but that's okay. You didn't sound positive on that one, so that's okay. And in the jails, we have we're going to begin paying for the cost of keeping prisoners that before trial. I know that's been an issue in the past that we talked about in the city and county and law board before, so that would be helpful. I don't know if we don't have any wind turbines, but they are going to put lights on turbines that come on just when the planes are in the area, so that people don't have to look at those lights all the time. That's kind of where we are with the other than the food tax issues and the appraiser issue. I think the training for appraisers did pass, but I don't have it. I don't have a bill number in front of me. Well, it was on the sales tax bill. We may have voted for that separately. It seems like we did. So that's what I can add to the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney.
I guess I'll throw in a couple of bills that I was involved in that may have some impact on the county. I'd shared this with Clancy at one point, but in our corrections committee, we had worked through a sort of a jail modernization bill. Those statutes were all quite old, and some of the language was difficult because it directly referenced the sheriff. So Riley County having a consolidated law enforcement agency with the jail was difficult. There were also some counties, I believe Shawnee County is one where the sheriff doesn't control the jail for some other reasons, but the county does. So we got that language right. That helps with some of the medical costs and things. The sheriffs I talked to in my district were supportive of it. So that was a good piece. We took care of you guys there. And then I was involved pretty in depth with the water funding bills. That was HB 2302. The Senate knocked down how much we wanted to spend on that, but at the end of the day, it passed both houses. It's headed to the governor, should be signed. And we had set aside a substantial amount of funding for municipalities. And I know you guys have worked on some districts. I don't recall all the details, but I know you've had some water and sewer district issues. So we ended up trimming that back a little bit, but there's $5 million a year that goes to technical assistance. And 12 million that goes to actual projects. It can include matching funds, things like that. But I encourage you guys to follow that process as the water office develops the regulations to apply for those grants, because they are weighted for smaller entities, but there's potential to get money for all sizes of counties there, and certain amounts of loan forgiveness and things like that. So I do encourage you to follow the water office process and participate as they develop those regulations. And I'm sure the Association of Counties will be involved with input on that as well. But those were the two things that I would throw out there. So.
Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate it.
Hey, this is Nate Butler. I don't really have anything to add. I think Mike and Kenny and Ush and Sydney, they covered just about everything that we've been working on up there. And we're still working the single, or the single tax rate went through. So that's going to be a new challenge for some folks to work through. But I think we can work through that if it gets past the governor's desk. And we'll see where it goes from there. But otherwise, everybody's already commented. They've commented on just about everything. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Nate.
Francis, do you have a comment? This is Mike. I know you had some input on how these tax bills were set out. I mean, you wanted to have a fairly reasonable explanation when people got their bills, that where they could mark things over a period of 4 years, I think is where that started out.
Hello, General. Who you were speaking to, Mike? I missed
Francis
that.
Auerkamp.
Francis, okay.
Hey, General, how are you? Hello, everybody. Yeah, so it's a minor little small bill. It has to do with the valuation notices that get mailed out, I think in early March each year. And currently the notices have the new appraisal amount, and then 1 year prior, the bill was introduced would show 4 years prior, including the new appraisal value, just so people could see 5 years of data. I found it interesting that the bill was amended to just include the new year assessed value and then 2 years look back, because they found it to be a struggle to figure out how to put 5 years of data on a single piece of paper. So believe it or not, the government doesn't like printing paper, I guess. So it's to save everybody a few dollars. The Senate amended it to just show the 2 years look back instead of the 4 years look back. So it is a small bill, but it just helps people have a little bit more information on that. But on a bright note, the one thing that I think the legislature did do this year, sometimes it's stuff we do, but sometimes it's what we don't do is actually a greater victory. And I think we did a good job killing a lot of the economic development bills, which is really, I think, corporate welfare at the end of the day. And we killed a lot of those bills, stopped them from being continued, or even stopped a few of them from getting to the legislature, and a few that even hit them up hard enough as they went through the process that they wouldn't have made it through the process, I believe. And so we saw some gerrymandering go on to where in conference committee on the budget, a few of these bills actually had to get inserted into the budget And that was the only way they could pass the legislature, which is kind of dirty tactics, but that's what happens in politics. So we saw a couple of things like that, but I think that was a great victory for the people of Kansas, that we are starting to limit and reduce the number of the corporate welfare or economic development programs that the legislature is passing. So kind of a bright year on a lot of levels. That's a little bit input. I have a lot more, but I'll yield back.
The, for the commissioners and Clancy, remember that these bills now go to the governor. And some of these bills don't have a huge majority. So just to give you an example, 2184, and I'd encourage you to read these in detail because they are detailed as Representative Auerkamp just pointed out. They're complex and a lot of things are amended in, amended out. And so in many of these bills, you have several other bills inserted, and the supplemental notes and the CCRBs both show that. So if you look at 2184, which is the budget bill, the House was 79-44 on that. So I don't know what the governor will do, but it is a little bit weak, at least on the House side. And then Senate Bill 169, which is the tax bill, is 85-38 on the 85-38 on the House side. Don't recall what it was on the Senate side. Now, some of the things that were, you could argue might have been in the tax bill were actually in Senate Bill 8. That's the one that had the parts of 2002, which took out the local tax part, amended that out. That was 76-46. So you can see there's a little bit of weakness of support. This is basically by people pushing back a little bit on some of these tax incentives. But on the main tax, just to explain just a little bit further, the Senate came in at 4.75 as an initial offer on the single rate tax. The House started off at 5.25, and I think if everybody hasn't seen the little YouTube on kind of how this works, comparing the single rate tax against the 3-tier tax, you ought to take a look at that. It's very instructive. The 4.75 would have cost us about $1.4 billion of revenue. The 5.25 cost us $460. The 5.15, where we ended up, cost us just about $500 million. But when you look inside of it, basically what that does is return money in various ways to taxpayers. That was one of the overall things. We said at the beginning we wanted to buy down debt and send money back to taxpayers and put money in the rainy day fund. That rainy day fund will end up somewhere between 1.5 and $2 billion, which is kind of your ending year balance. So as Francis said, we pulled a lot of things out, and so hopefully made a reasonably balanced ending out of that. But as I said in the beginning, the difficulty might be if the governor chooses to veto these bills.
I might add something to that, Representative Dodson. The rainy day fund is separate from the ending balance, which is 7.5%. So we do have the ending balance at the required amount, as well as going into this year, we have 1.5 billion in the rainy day. And if we add 500 million, it'd be 2 billion. So that's really good. In the 21 years I've been there, we have never had a rainy day fund, and only 1 year we had a 7.5% ending balance. So it is time to give some money back to people. It is definitely time to work on our tax plan. I voted against this bill. My district has too many people that are not getting a break on that. The $50,000 to $70,000 income range just didn't get their share, and that's why I voted against it. On the 2184, yeah, everybody read that, because it's the budget bill. And very few people read that, but there are sheets that are available for us to read. Anyone can read them, I guess, from the conference committee. And to watch what the conference committee did to the budget is interesting, but it's only the things they deal with. It's not everything in the budget. So it's hard to know yet, but the governor will not veto the entire budget, but she may veto provisions in the budget. And then I don't know that we have ever taken up individual provisions in the budget that she's vetoed, but if it was a huge item, they would. So that's the way I think that will work. There will be things that she will veto in that. So whether it's something we'll take up, I don't know.
I'd like to jump in just for a second. Representative Bloom, you were trying to get on earlier, but you were muted. Did you? And you're still muted. Okay, you were unmuted there for a second. Looks like you're using your eyes. There you go.
Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Well, a minute ago you could see me, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Probably a lot of things. On 1611, the way I understand it, that passed out of the Senate late, and that won't be worked this year. And then the next thing I'm going to say is that this big school budget's coming up, and that's going to be something else too. Outside of that, I think everybody's pretty well voiced everything I was concerned about.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, Clancy, I just wanted to say about the budget. I did vote against the budget in the Senate because the school funding was not in there. That's very separate, and that's close to, I don't know, $3 or $4 million. And Medicaid expansion was taken out, another $5 million, and it was kind of put in different ways. So the positives in the bill, in the budget, though, although that was about $1 billion worth, why I didn't vote for it. The positives in the bill were typically for the Crisis Stabilization Center, we had the lottery vending machines, and $8 million was dedicated to that. This time they're transferring $9 million to our Crisis Stabilization Centers. So that's really, I thought that was really great news for mental health in our communities, especially Pawnee, which covers, I think, 9 counties. The other plus in the budget was the K-State 105 plan. They've been dedicated $5 million in 2024 and another $5 million in 2025 to implement that in our 105 counties for research in agriculture as well as extension programs. So those were two positives, plus the water bills, which Representative Titus was very much instrumental in bringing forth. So those were really several good initiatives in there, but the other two major factors for me, I had to vote no on that one. Thank you.
Take a pause here for just a second. Commissioners, did you have any questions particularly, or anything you'd like to ask the delegation?
I did want to touch on Senate Bill 162 real quick. While I do agree with the general on probably getting some more collaboration and getting some more partnerships with this, I think the bigger challenge is, on the municipal side, you have that home rule, so you're allowed to do ordinances separate, and you're able to take care of nuisance and noise and the other abatements that are sometimes required for those properties, whereas counties doesn't. And I'm not anticipating us getting that, but we have to have some mechanism in place that's a little different than the cities to do that. So I'd be curious to see where the league would fall on that, considering. And of course, we do have some other special interests that may or may not be on board with it just simply because of that. But in terms of the urban designation, I mean, Riley County is in the metropolitan part of that. In order to gain federal funds, there is an urbanized zone. Most of our properties that were listed in this and talking about fall within that zone. I don't know if that matters in the short term or long term for that or not. And the other thing I would point out is if we're going to go county by county, I don't know, every single of the 105 counties has the need for this. So I don't know still if a one size fits all works, and each county probably needs to bring that to the legislature at one point in time with maybe its own separate provisions. But you know, the fact that it is being worked, I think is good news. I don't see it being a huge problem here. I think the majority of our properties do the right thing here. It's just a handful that we need to work on. And I'd like to think that we'd be able to do that within that 3-year period, if nothing else. So.
Anything else, Commissioner?
I know that Potawatomi County had some publicity a while back on a cleanup of a person's home yard. And I don't know if it fits with this bill, probably does. So you might look close to home to see if there are some counties that would be interested in supporting that with you. Also, there was some money sent out to all the counties, health departments, and hospitals in critical access. Hospitals are, I think it's $20 million to share among all the critical access hospitals, but it's not a lot when you divide it up, but we are looking at ways to improve the delivery of healthcare in the state as best we can without doing Medicaid. So we've spent a lot of state general fund money on healthcare improvements that will affect the state in good ways. But many of those things could have been taken care of with Medicaid expansion with federal dollars instead of our state general fund. So when our fund is low and we cut taxes too much, or we have a recession, we may be sorry that we have invested so much in a lot of the budgets that we did improve this year because of the fact that they might not be sustainable if we do too much of a tax cut. So we do need to do tax relief, but I've seen it go up and down and it concerns me. So but there is more money coming to counties and local governments. I'll have to try to provide you a list when I get a chance. Thank you.
Yeah, this is wasn't anything we brought up, but Representative Powercamp, you brought up that you wanted to put 5 years of valuations, back years on valuation. What purpose would that serve?
So it was 5 years total, 4 years looking back, and then the current. So this mainly came up a few years ago when the revenue neutral rate conversation was going on. I think I was one of 4 people in the House that voted against the revenue neutral rate because I saw the process that it put on the local units of government and the county clerks to be rather burdensome and frustrating. And then obviously the costs and everything else. So I was trying to think, okay, what's a better way to give the property owners more information about their property valuations and taxes and all that. So I had a grandiose idea about putting a little bit much more information on the valuation notices because they were already getting mailed out. The Department of Revenue told me that all the information that I wanted to put on the valuation notices would have been a bit hard to make their computer programs generate automatically. So I just said, well, what would happen if we just added a few more years, look back on the valuation notices so people can see their valuation over a longer period of time. I know they can look back in their files and see prior years, but just having it all right on that single piece of paper. But really the idea came back during the discussion on the revenue neutral rate years when that legislature passed that. I didn't like that bill, so I was trying to come up with another concept that would just help people understand their property valuations and link to taxes a little bit better. So it's more just to give people easier access to information. But really it was a hopeful, wishful attempt a few years ago to kind of T-bone the revenue neutral rate bill, which I failed at. So, but I like the idea about adding a little bit more information on those valuation notices because they already get mailed out. There's no real additional cost other than a little bit more ink on a piece of paper. But I think the value was there. So I introduced the bill again, got a hearing, it went through and then got amended to where it's basically not any different than what we're currently doing. So it's not a big deal. Yeah, that's the reason why.
But I appreciate anything to stop the R&R stuff, but valuation isn't taxes. I mean, if you wanted to put the back taxes, but when the tax notice goes out, put the back years, because I mean, we've been inundated in fact that people got a new valuation that went up 10%, said, why are you raising my taxes 10%? That doesn't mean valuation. It has some relation, but it doesn't necessarily mean the taxes went up 10%. And people don't understand that. You're wanting to show what their taxes are going up. And I'm sure we'd hear about it on that, but at least that'd be the taxes, not valuation. That people confuse the two items. They're two different things, but
Right.
People don't understand that.
Yeah, and that was the initial idea, was wanted to show the 4 years look back, including the current proposed year of, well, couldn't really do the current proposed year because the budgets hadn't been adopted yet, but the 4 years look back on the actual tax rate, mill levy, the taxes amount, and the tax amount per entity, and actually the mill rate per entity. So I wanted all that information on those valuation notices, which would be really cool, but the Department of Revenue kind of freaked out and said, don't do that. That is going to be a ton of work. So I wanted to include not just the valuation, but all the taxes and broken down by taxing authority for the 4 prior years, which is fun data, but beyond the capabilities of our IT department and the Department of Revenue.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I understand more what you were going after than thanks.
While we're on that subject, did the legislature pass or not pass a provision that actually funds those? I guess permanently at this point in time, and not just for 1 year. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I just funded it. I'm in taxation. They agreed to just do it for 1 year, and they're hoping from then on we can do it online. So I don't know how it's going to work online, because when you have to grab all of their emails, even if you have a utility bill that goes via email, I don't know if this is something that all property tax owners and how credible it is. But right now it's only funded for 1 extra year, not permanently. So you either have to come back every single year, or they have to stop doing it, or you have to fund it on your own as a community.
Well, even if you put it online, there's still a hard cost with that. There's still personnel time, and that wasn't part of the original provision anyway, but there's cost of software, there's cost with IT, there's cost with security. There's a whole list of other functions that have a physical hard cost to it, even if you do move it to a more online or e-type of function.
I think that's something you need to bring forth to the committees, because that is in House Bill 2002 as one of the requirements. And if you feel that is an unfunded mandate, that's certainly something you need to speak to, because especially if it requires, like you said, another staff person, different type of software, and all the other capabilities that is required to do something of that sort. And in Riley County and Manhattan, we do, I think, relatively well, but there's a lot of local communities, especially in our rural areas, that don't even have broadband yet. So, that's something that's a discussion, that's a continuing discussion that we need to have.
If I may just add, the whole R&R process is an unfunded mandate as far as I'm concerned. So, but yeah, I get your point. I appreciate it.
And I'm pretty sure that actually got conferenced into Senate Bill 8, along with the 1 year reimbursement, as I look at the supplemental note and the electronic piece. So, and that passed the House very late, but the Senate will have to take it up when they come back for the veto session. So Senate Bill 8 in and of itself is that had about 20 different tax related items into it. It didn't have any of the big income tax, but it also had the, I think someone mentioned it, the government competing with private. I think that was Senator Reddy as well, but the government competing piece was in that as well. So I don't know what'll happen to that, but they put a lot of ornaments on that tree to get that piece across the finish line. So yeah.
All of that's in Senate Bill 8, Kenny.
Yeah.
And we've still got special ed to do.
Yeah.
Right, we're near the, speaking of finish lines, we're right near the end of this one in terms of scheduled time. So I guess I would just, during those remaining 4 or 5 minutes, if anybody has something in particular that you believe Riley County needs to be watching for, I would appreciate it if you would let us know that. You don't have to do it during these 4 minutes, but anytime you feel free to get in touch with me or get in touch with our department heads, whichever one's in a particular area of interest that you have on a bill. I do appreciate all the work you've done during this session, the cooperation, the communication with us on pending matters has been very, very helpful. And thank you for reaching out to staff for information on various bills too. That's also serves the county well. So, we don't have authority to actually end this until we hit the 11:30 hour, but I just wanted to tell you we're coming up on that.
Clancy, I would like to thank all of you for interacting, and some of it is late. So I know that sometimes a quick response is difficult based on the other things you're doing, and particularly thanks to Rich Vargo. Some of that stuff on elections is pretty hard to deal with sometimes because there's a lot of emotion coming in from both sides on what we ought to be doing. So I appreciate his level-headed approach to elections and what it means to the county.
Can you hear me now, Louis Bloom?
Yes, we can, sir.
What has happened with going ahead trying to get a sheriff or not get a sheriff? Because I represent northern and western Riley counties, and so many of those people want a sheriff. What's going on there?
From my perspective, sir, Clancy, I haven't heard anything on that recently. That was a hot issue last session or the session before. There was discussion about that, but I'm not aware of anything on the legislative side.
Okay, well, I'm still getting a lot of emails and phone calls about it, and
Yeah,
I didn't know what you guys were doing about it, if you have Riley County vote on it or what you're going to do, because people are asking me and I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah, there's no pending petition of any kind that would require that I'm aware of. So, and I'm not aware of state legislation.
Yeah, I think it would have to be done legislatively on that because it's built and basically regulated by Kansas statute. A whole list of
There's a vote. Yeah, there's a petition to end it's called a law enforcement.
Yeah.
And that's
well, I understood once the amendment passed and it was up to Riley County to have a vote. That's not right.
No,
not on terms of having a sheriff instead of a director or consolidated law enforcement. I'm not aware of anything.
No, just what it means from that bill last year is if we were to go that route, the sheriff would have to actually be elected and could not be appointed.
Yeah, Bill, Riley County was exempted from the bill that was passed 2 sessions ago. They tried it, I guess, first time I was up there and amended Riley County out. Then they tried it the next year. They were successful, but Riley County remains opted out. So anything that is found does not include Riley County, and each one of the counties then is entitled to have an elected sheriff. That was the crux of the matter. And the only thing that impacts Riley County was the fact that if we chose at some future date to have a sheriff, then we could not go back to having a consolidated department. So that was originally in the Constitution of the state of Kansas, and I think it was amended out in 1906 or something. So it's been a while ago, but at any rate, that's the status now.
Well, that's all well and good, but if they decide to choose, what do they have to do?
Well, they have to raise the citizens of Riley County would have to raise a petition under current statute.
That's what I'm trying to get to. And what I'm being told is there's no use doing that because the city likes their police chief and they will be outvoted. So there's no use even going forward. Is that right?
Well, I don't know about that. All I know is the process. So they can do what they want.
But if they ask me, I can tell them that they have to get a petition.
That's correct.
And that has to be presented to the commissioners or to who?
Yes, it would be
No,
presented.
that has to be under the, as Senator Representative Dodson said, has to be under the existing statutory scheme. Those statutes say exactly on consolidation, how that petition needs to be done, how it's presented.
Okay.
So
Okay, that's what I need to know. I need to know,
Sure.
I don't know what to tell them. I need to know what to tell them and how they do it.
I understand. And I would direct them back to the statutory scheme for, because that's there, it describes how to do that if people want to do a petition to end.
So now is it out of the state's hands and it's in the county's hands, or will it still have to go back to the state?
Well, the state, quite frankly, can craft just about anything it wanted, I suppose, but currently their consolidated law enforcement exists until either the city and the county have a public meeting and end it, or there's a petition from enough people who want to end it, have a vote. That's statutory scheme.
So the commission, if they had enough support, they could end it, right?
Who are you, when you say commission, it would have to be either
the commissioners
from both governing bodies. From the state and the county.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that actually every year. They have the ability to do it, but they have to do it in an agreed resolution, or there can be a petition filed by citizens. Those are
the people can stop it by a petition. They would have to do it as an ordinance type thing where they'd have, is that right, Clancy, where they'd have
no, it's not
two hearings?
No.
See, everybody is so confused that,
Well, there's no real reason for them to be confused, because if they'll look at the statutory scheme, it says exactly how to do the petition. It tells them.
Do you want to give us that number, Clancy? I bet you know it.
Wrong, you're gonna lose that bet.
Well, I've got it tabbed in my law book, but I thought I don't know where it is.
I don't memorize statute. Nope, sorry. I'd be glad to send that out, both to Representative Bloom and to you.
Yeah, I think he should have that. And
Yeah, that would
read it
be
carefully,
helpful.
and then ask questions after you read it, because it's a complex issue, but Clancy's correct on that.
I'll send it out to you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. And we're at the point where we can go ahead and end this unless somebody's got something else they desperately want to say. I don't see any hands on my side.
Bye.
Thank you all very much for participating. I appreciate it. Thank you for your work.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing us up to date.
No, sorry. Yeah. And the lights back on.
Give me a second here to adjust.
Yeah, you adjourn. Yeah.
We adjourn,
Like standard.
okay.
Yep.
Too much stuff on there.
Well, I was just gonna say, there was apparently somewhat of an issue floating around here. I'm sure everybody's gotten emails on this substation issue here over across the way.
No. Oh, that energy, okay, yeah.
Planning board meetings tonight.
I will let me just jump in just for a second with your cooperation. You want to refrain from discussing the merits of it at this point in terms of the merits of the proposal, because that could be considered by whoever loses later on, because this is going to come back to the board. Just tell you.
I don't even know the provisions of it yet, so I can't talk about what I don't know.
But again, I don't know what you don't know,
Wow.
and I can't do my job if I don't tell you that if you discuss it publicly, then it can be, someone could view that and could prove it, even if it were not true, that there was prejudgment of the merits of the matter. So you want to avoid that. It's the same thing I would tell you on anything that's pending in the zoning or land use matter that's going to come back your way. And now I'm done.
Well, I was gonna attend this evening, but I'm not sure if anybody else was either. So, okay, so probably not a good idea to have both of us here.
Well,
So,
and that's only a perception matter.
Okay.
You're entitled to go as long as you do not discuss county business.
That's my understanding. I can't see, I could attend the meeting for informational purposes. I'm not gonna present anything, I'm not gonna answer any questions, just.
Even if
It's
you
probably
don't
gonna.
discuss, sit far apart too, just for.
I'm gonna go ahead and just let you do it. I've got plenty of other stuff to work on. I'll get some other information, but
Okay,
I know it's coming up on the radar and
I've got a stack of emails.
yeah, people aren't happy. So,
There's a couple of letters that came in too.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've got the letters, emails, stack of stuff coming in.
fair enough. That's basically all I've got.
Is one of those on open meeting stuff. Very often it's the perception of those things that matters much more than the reality. Because then you will need resources to defend even against a claim that's just untrue.
I have a feeling this is gonna be pretty contentious, so. Err on the side of caution.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not the only speaker, I just wanted to listen.
I'll let you have that.
Okay.
It's got a note.
Oh, great. Speak to them.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything else. Okay. So I guess with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn the April 10th meeting of the Riley County Commission.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting, April 10th.